Chapter 1045. Countless streaks of starlight gathered above the warship, forming a crystal-light shield that looked like smooth glass. After a brief conversation with Wilson, the Level 9 elder of the Coleman family secretly activated the internal concealment device and prepared to retreat as soon as possible. The horde of golden stone beasts, Yumu, the sword of heavenly water, and more than a dozen sun god grand cultivators gave them a strong sense of danger. The alien races in the outer realms were most afraid of encountering the hunters of the demon race and the human race. Because they knew how powerful and cruel they were, most of the alien races would avoid them until they were absolutely sure that they could defeat them. Since the Annihilation Star Zone was so close, why would they fight them at the edge of the Star Zone? Asa and Wilson didn't trust Yu Yuan and Lady Peach. After all, those two unknown people were also humans from the Howran Star Zone. They thought that the Tongtian Trading Company and the experts of the Shunhun sect must have made arrangements in the Annihilation Star Zone. As long as this warship rushed into the Annihilation Star Zone, the powerful demons who were obviously on the side of the top 5 experts of the Howran Star Zone would definitely not dare to pursue them there. "Wilson, what are you doing?" Benin, who had instigated them to come here, didn't expect them to be so cowardly. The arrogance they had shown when facing Pattinson, Elena, and the other bandits of the same race was completely gone. The Coleman family didn't even think about it and was about to flee. "Let's go into the Annihilation Star Zone first," Wilson said decisively. He didn't want to show off at all because Benin was next to him. While talking to Benin, his eyes flashed with vigilance and uneasiness. His attention was always on the meteors where the golden stone beasts were entrenched. "Hurry!" Wilson let out a high-pitched scream, because he suddenly saw that the group of meteors where the golden stone beasts were sitting suddenly moved because of a vicious smile on Jinli's face. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The meteors of different sizes seemed to be driven by the golden stone beasts. Like giant golden millstones, they shot toward the warship at an extremely fast speed. "Hee, since you've seen him, don't be in a hurry to leave." Jinli bared his teeth and revealed a cruel smile. He gestured at Yumu and ordered, "Boys, the food is here. Enjoy it." One after another, the golden stone beasts, which had assumed battle stances on the meteors, began to grind their teeth. The warriors of the Dark Spirit clan were just an appetizer. This expensive battleship of the Star clan in front of them seemed to be the main course. "Fire!" Seeing this, Asa made a prompt decision and gave the signal to attack. The angle of the long, prismatic crystal pillar was adjusted slightly, and the surging star energy within it rapidly refined, as if it had been blended together by an array and condensed into streams of star energy that were as thick as an arm. In the blink of an eye, dozens of dazzling streaks of star energy shot towards the incoming golden crag beasts. The meteors that the golden stone beasts were sitting on would explode the moment they were hit by the star dome cannon. If the golden stone beasts didn't dodge in time and were hit by the star dome cannon, their bodies, which were as tough as divine iron, would be penetrated in an instant. If the golden stone beasts were unlucky and pierced through the heart of a demon, they would die a horrible death. However, if the golden crag beast had only been shot through by the star vault cannon, it would have only been howling in pain, and the wound would have healed at an astonishing speed with its flesh wriggling. These great demons with rank 8 bloodlines all had monstrous physique. As long as their hearts weren't pierced, they would only suffer minor injuries. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A few Yang Soul Realm cultivators from the sects of the Tranquil Continent cooperated with the Golden Stone Beasts and flew toward the Star Clan's battleship. Zhan Runan and Sun Jun were among them. A Yang Soul Realm cultivator from the Devil's Palace disappeared like a ghost under the Star Dome Cannon's barrage. When he reappeared, he was already below the Star Clan's battleship. He stabbed the bottom of the battleship with a dark green spear, causing large cracks to appear on the crystal-like shield. Boom! Boom boom! The golden stone beasts charged out of the cannon fire, and rammed the battleship's shield with their meteors. The ninth-grade golden stone beast, the strongest among them, stomped on large meteors and started to transform from its human form to that of a beast, giving rise to loud growls. "I'll take care of them!" His beastly roar echoed from the motionless meteors behind him. There, the heavenly water sword, Yumu was suppressing Fernan. Huang Baichi had stabbed Rani's chest with a slender sword. There were also a few cultivators from the Tianyuan continent. The Goblin Temple, the Devil's Palace, and the cultivators of the Tranquil Continent worked together to attack the Star Clan's battleship. On the other side, they continued to attack Rani and Fernan. They also took care of Yu Yuan and Lady Peach on the Dark Paradise. This was a tacit agreement the two sides had reached in a short period of time. Whoosh! The pitch-black cauldron rose into the air, broke through the fluorescent energy barrier, and stepped into the dark, calm, and dangerous starry sky. Yu Yuan stood inside the cauldron with both hands on its mouth, as if he were admiring the beautiful scenery in outer space. He walked unhurriedly toward the Tianyuan continent cultivators. Sigh. "I'm so unlucky to be with this guy." Hu Tsayun's face was full of helplessness. When the fiendish demon cauldron flew out, she almost didn't hesitate. She also stood in the surging sea of colorful clouds and flew towards the sword of heavenly water, Yumu. "Don't move." On the Dark Paradise, the rank 8 Azura race warrior was still holding down Elena. "If you go, you'll cause extra trouble. They can threaten you through the general, but they don't think the two of them care about the general's life or death." Pattinson also said, "Listen to him." Elena wasn't stupid. She immediately understood the meaning of his words and nodded heavily. The Yang spirit realm cultivators of the human race had never taken them seriously. Great cultivators like Huang Baichi obviously didn't care about the life or death of her father and Rani. Similarly, they felt that Yu Yuan and Hu Kaiyun didn't care. In this situation, Huang Baichi and Yumu couldn't make a fuss about Fernan and Rani's life or death. Fernan was a rank 9 Platinum Azura. Although he was covered in wounds, he couldn't be killed instantly. It was very likely that the Heavenly Water Sword would ignore Fernan because of Hu Kaiyun and Yu Yuan's arrival. After thinking this through, Elena stood where she was and looked expectantly at Yu Yuan and Hu Kaiyun. "Don't expect too much." Pattinson lowered his voice, his eyes a little strange. "It's already very unexpected that they can come. I don't think Yu Yuan and that madam of hers will risk their lives to fight the enemy for you and us." He wanted to say that Yu Yuan and you are just short-lived lovers. The heartless and cold-blooded humans don't care about you. Of course, they won't fight to the death for you, Elena. I don't expect too much. I'm just praying for a miracle. Hearing his words, the Shura girl lowered her head slightly, as if she knew that what he said was the truth. She didn't believe that a man like Yu Yuan would fight a human expert to the death just because he had slept with her a few times, and for the sake of her father's survival, he would fight for his life. Yumu. The fiendish demon cauldron stopped on the larger meteor. Yu Yuan calmly jumped out and looked at the heavenly water sword with a strange expression. Under his gaze, Yumu quickly retreated. With a bitter smile, he temporarily put down his sword and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Senior Hong." "Oh!" Yumu's performance caused the expressions of the Sun God Realm experts on this meteor and the nearby meteors to change. Elena and Pattinson were also stunned on the gloomy paradise that was anchored in the distance. The two of them were old acquaintances? "Senior, it's really difficult to repay your kindness in the past. Please don't blame me." Yumu sighed softly. "I represent the Sword Sect. I can't make any mistakes. Call me by my name in this life." Yu Yuan smiled. "Lady Peach, you'd better come over. I don't want to fight with Yu Yuan." Yumu looked very helpless. "Otherwise, when I return to Howran, Senior Sister Ji will never let me go." "Me?" Hu Kaiyun pointed at his nose and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Great sword immortal you're the pillar of the sword sect in the next era. Do you think it's appropriate to bully a woman who has a dead husband? Also, don't tell me you don't know why my husband died? He died for the 3 high sex. Shouldn't you remember old times and not make things difficult for me? As soon as these words came out, the few young soul grand cultivators of the older generation who knew the inside story fell silent. Huang Baichi, however, didn't think so. Who didn't sacrifice for their sect. There are countless human experts who died in the outer realms of the Starry River. Your husband isn't the only one. You bastard! Hu Tsayun's anger was instantly ignited. Ignoring Yu Mu's suggestion, the 7-colored sea of clouds suddenly floated towards Huang Baichi like brilliant flames. As for the life of the bandit king, Rani, she really didn't care. Yu Mu drew out sword lights that contained strange water power and instantly shot into the sea of clouds. Holding the sword, Yu Mu looked at the person behind him and said, "It's your turn to deal with Fernan." The person nodded slightly. Yu Mu disappeared into thin air and then appeared in the sea of clouds. He kept swinging his sword, destroying the multicolored light, smoke, and miasma that flowed over. As he swung his sword, the powerful demons, fierce beasts, and mutant monsters that had been killed by the miasma died in the blink of an eye. Hu Kaiyun didn't want to touch him. She wanted to attack Huang Baichi, but found that Yu Mu didn't want to touch Yu Yuan even more. Whether Hu Kaiyun agreed or not, Yu Mu would come to her. She didn't have a choice. "Are you bullying me?" Hu Tsayun's beautiful eyes widened, looking very angry. The peach tree shining with divine light behind her appeared again, looking more and more magical and extraordinary. Lu Rue of the Primal Yang sect, from Mount Shaoyang. The person who replaced Yu Mu reported his name and origin, and stepped out from behind Fernan. Yu Yuan couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. Tang Jing from Mount Shaoyang. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. P.S. The title of the chapter is a tribute to some bad guys last night. Chapter 1046. Cultivators from the Primal Yang sect and Mount Shaoyang could be said to be Yu Yuan's fated enemies. Tang Qin had died in the Sea of Stardust, and Tang Jing had died in the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons. Some cultivators from Mount Shaoyang had also died because of Yu Yuan. Because of this, the cultivators on this mountain peak had always been hostile to Yu Yuan. Lu Rue hadn't returned to Haoran for decades. This was the first time he had met Yu Yuan. However, not long ago, he had received word from the Primal Yang sect that their sect master, who had always been protective of his disciples, had accidentally slipped into the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons, where he had been besieged and killed by powerful outsiders and heavenly devils. Perhaps Tang Jing, who was eccentric and vengeful in everyone's eyes, wasn't very likable. However, all of the cultivators from Mount Shaoyang, regardless of whether they were Tang Jing's disciples or his disciples, were full of respect for him. This was because no matter how big of a mistake the cultivators of Mount Shaoyang made, he would always stand firmly on their side. Because of this, even the sect master of the Primal Yang sect had a headache. Lu Rue knew that Tang Jing's death had something to do with Yu Yuan, who controlled the sealing heaven soul-transforming formation. Therefore, he had made a mental note of Yu Yuan's name, hoping to get even with him later. Who would have thought that they would run into each other in the Starry River so soon? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road indeed. Please enlighten me, Lord Medicine God. Lu Rue clasped his fists and bowed. As soon as he straightened his back, numerous refined objects that looked like colored glass suddenly shot towards the top of Yu Yuan's head like a meteor shower. Yu Yuan's expression flickered as he saw the flames that filled heaven and earth. The corner of Yu Yuan's mouth twitched as he said, "You're only at the middle Yang God stage. This isn't your true form. It's just a Yang God body." He didn't even use his scabbard. Instead, he clasped his fingers together and slashed them in the air like a sword. A streak of crimson sword light that carried heaven-rending, earth-shattering power cut the falling pieces of colored glass into a rain of flames. You're too weak. If you were here in your true form, I might have a chance to fight you. But now, activating the wild force of the fiend devil, Shi Yan's immense qi and blood essence in his meridians changed according to his will and condensed into many golden crag beasts, drowning Lu Rue. The fiendish demon cauldron hovering above his head whooshed towards Fernan. At this moment, the Shura general's huge body was rooted to the ground like a stone pillar. Inside the thick blood vessels in his body, there was actually sword light that was overflowing with water. Yumu's sword lights clashed with the bloodline crystal chains in his body like two armies, causing heaven and earth to turn dark. When the fiendish demon cauldron approached, Fernan, who was trying his best to suppress the chaos in his body, was at a loss. He didn't know if the dark cauldron was saving him or seizing this opportunity to kill him. He didn't trust a single human. "Father, he's saving you." Elena pressed the heart-shaped pendant on her neck with her left thumb and transmitted her thoughts. Fernan was stunned. Zlotsla! All of a sudden, a bolt of cyan lightning pierced the Shura general's back. Huang Baichi of the lightning element sect appeared out of nowhere and looked at Yu Yuan with a fake smile. Then, he waved his hand at the fiend demon cauldron and unleashed balls of explosive lightning. Boom! The balls of lightning exploded beside the fiendish demon cauldron. The lightning bolts were specifically targeted at souls. Yu, who had planned to use the fiendish demon formation to save Fernan, couldn't help but give up on the idea. "Big brother!" Pattinson of the Shadow Clan let out a heart-wrenching scream. On another meteor, Ronnie, who had been on the verge of death, felt his heart explode like a watermelon. The impact of the explosion mangled Ronnie's chest and shattered all of his bones. Numerous fine lightning bolts and electric currents sputtered out of the corners of Ronnie's eyes and nostrils. Pattinson looked and knew that Huang Baichi of the lightning element sect had used his sharp, thin sword to shatter his big brother's heart. He had also used thunder and lightning to drown Ronnie's soul, destroying Ronnie's body and soul and cutting off his chances of rebirth. Huang Baichi had casually killed the Bandit King, Ronnie, before he had moved to another location with Thunder Escape. "He's worthless, so I had to kill him as soon as possible." Huang Baichi, who had stabbed his sword into Fernan's back and scattered the fiendish demon cauldron with balls of lightning, smiled at Yu Yuan, revealing dazzling white teeth. "Senior medicine god, you've surprised me. Who is this Azura race bandit to you? You actually saved him?" As he spoke, the hand holding the hilt of his sword made a light turn. The blade of the sword changed its position inside Fernan's body. Blood immediately foamed at the corner of Fernan's mouth. The heavenly water sword's sword energy that he had worked so hard to suppress, which had originated from Yumu, completely erupted and wantonly moved inside his flesh and organs. A wave of sword energy that pushed away all other auras surged in all directions. Huang Baichi let out a low snort. He saw the sword in his hand and the lightning that had seeped into Fernan's body being forcefully scattered by Yumu's sword energy and forced out. Even his hand, which was holding the sword, was shaken to the point that lightning shot out. This strange young spirit body felt pain. "Senior Yu, this isn't very good, is it?" Huang Baichi frowned, holding the thin sword interwoven with lightning. He silently circulated his power and dissolved the flowing sword energy of water. He looked at Yumu in the colorful sea of clouds with dissatisfaction. "We're all allies who fought side by side. You're a senior, and I'm only helping to kill someone. Why do you have to make things difficult for me?" Everyone knew that the sword intent and sword energy of a great sword immortal in the carefree realm were connected to their master's mind. Yumu's battle with Lady Peach did not mean that the sword energy he had left in Fernan's body was not under his control. The sword energy that contained the strange power of water scattered the lightning that Huang Baichi had imbued into it and forced him to withdraw. This was clearly Yumu's intention. And Yumu was the leader of their team. Why did he have to do this? Inside the misty clouds, there were many long, thin water dragons created by Yumu's sword aura. They swallowed the clouds and spat out the mist. They weren't afraid of any kind of miasma, so Hukaiyun couldn't do anything to them. Yumu stood among the dozens of water dragons. Any wisp of miasma that approached would be devoured by the water dragons. Hearing this, he turned around, his back facing Hukaiyun and the extraordinary peach tree. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Huang Baichi. I gave the Azura race bandits to Lu Rui, not you. If I don't give them to you, you can't touch them. Do you understand? Huang Baichi's face stiffened. Senior, we are comrades. I'll say it again. I gave you the Shadow Race bandits after I agreed to let you deal with them. If they die, they die. You can torture them however you want. Yumu said expressionlessly, Fernan, I didn't tell you to touch them, so don't interfere. Do you understand? As soon as he finished speaking, the flowing sword light that Huang Baichi had dissolved and scattered from Fernando's body and flowed into his thin sword seemed to have suddenly turned into a turbulent river, rolling and surging violently. Huang Baichi's expression changed. Without thinking, he let go of his sword. But even so, many fine lines had appeared on his palm. This meticulously forged yang god body already had some flaws, and he needed to refine it again. Do you understand? Yumu repeated. I understand. Huang Baichi lowered his head, not daring to look at him. He silently took a few steps back. Remember, I'm a great sword immortal of the Sword Sect, a Freedom Realm cultivator. I'm the leader of your group. And behind you, Huang Baichi, is a lower sect. You're only at the Yang God realm, far from the Freedom Realm. You may never reach my level in your lifetime. Yumu's words hit the nail on the head. In the Starry River, remember your status and obey orders. Whoosh! Xiao Chen swung his sword again. A vast and mighty river formed from thousands of sword lights crashed into the many ferocious beasts in the colorful sea of clouds, causing them to explode one by one. Just as the river of sword energy was about to reach Hukaiyun, peach blossoms fell. Every single one of them seemed as heavy as a mountain, suppressing the sword energy in the river. Bang! 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 At the same time, the golden stone beasts formed by Yu Yuan's vast flesh and blood energy also knocked Lu Rui dizzy and forced him to retreat. Yu Yuan stopped in front of Fernan. Facing Fernan, he found that even though he was tall and sturdy among human beings, he was much shorter than Fernan. You! As soon as Fernan spoke, blood gushed out of his mouth. His face trembled. Chapter 1047. Thousands of tiny sword lights filled Fernand's muscular body and tore at his blood essence. Yumu swung his sword in the colorful sea of clouds, but the sword lights continued to drain energy from his body and keep the Azura general in check. The Sword of Heavenly Water, Yumu, the ninth sword immortal of the Sword Sect, seemed to be fighting Hukaiyun alone, but in reality, he was fighting one against two. Lady Peach, who had returned to the Freedom Realm, and Fernan, who had a rank 9 bloodline, were both suppressed by his overwhelming sword intent. Yu Yuan was secretly surprised by Fernand's fierce treatment of Huang Baichi. He thought to himself, what on earth did this shy kid go through in the past 300 years to become so ruthless and imposing? It was obvious that Huang Baichi, Lu Rui, and the other cultivators of the Tianyuan continent feared him from the bottom of their hearts. They must have seen some of his terrifying methods. Yu Yuan! Elena's urgent shout suddenly came from the dark paradise behind him. Yu Yuan's body shook slightly, and he immediately withdrew his thoughts. A beam of crimson blood light flew out of his chest and entered Fernand's body like a blood snake. He wanted to see how the general's injuries were. The moment the blood light entered Fernand's body, Yu Yuan seemed to see a strange scene play out in his body. Dense sword intent formed a mysterious net that filled Fernand's flesh and blood, eating away at his flesh and blood vitality and maintaining the operation of sword energy. This sword net continuously consumed Fernand's strength and grew stronger. He really is a traitor of the Howren. A mean woman who was standing on a strange icy pond spoke in a strange tone with a straight face. In the pond, carps with crystal-like tails swam briskly in the water. The long-faced woman exuded the aura of the frigid insect. Yu Yuan didn't even need to think to figure out her background. "Get the hell away from me," Yu Yuan said with a frown. Whoosh! The fiendish demon cauldron answered the call, and clusters of fiendish demons' soul shadows emerged from the cauldron. When the cauldron faced the woman, it looked at the mischievous and sweet-looking Yui. It quietly poked its head out and pointed at the woman's forehead with a hand as fair as jade. Beaming, it said, "Soul Hunter." Hundreds of fiendish demons worked together, and the yellow lamp in the center emitted a dim yellow light. The eyes of the young soul grand cultivator from the frigid insect suddenly went blank. Then, she saw a wisp of soul slowly float out from between her eyebrows, as if it wanted to obediently fly towards the fiendish demon cauldron. This scene sent chills down the spines of the other grand cultivators on the other meteors. The woman from the frigid insect, who was at the same cultivation level as them, was definitely not weak. However, she didn't have the power to fight back, and her soul left her body because of Yui's words. What was going on? Tut! In the depths of the colorful sea of clouds, Yumu helplessly opened his mouth and uttered a note. In the middle of the array of fiendish demons, the dim yellow lamp suddenly went out. The woman from the frigid insect, who was about to leave her body, shuddered and instantly realized what had just happened. Without daring to look at the fiendish demon cauldron again, she stepped onto the icy pond and retreated like a bolt of lightning. "Yumu, what kind of man are you?" Lady Peach was very displeased, as if she felt that this grand sword immortal of the sword sect didn't take her seriously because he kept meddling in other battles in her colorful sea of clouds. "You didn't try your best either. Why should I be so serious?" Surrounded by water dragons, Yumu seemed incomparably relaxed and calm. "I'm not good at fighting. I'm only good at the Tao of Winding Sword. As for me, I'll just stop you so that you can't escape." He looked up at the golden stone beasts that were ramming into the StarClan starship and said, "Let's wait until they come back." This grand sword immortal had made it clear that he didn't want to use his trump card to fight Hu Kaiyun to the death. Furthermore, he wasn't afraid that others would see through him. "You're really—" Madame Peach Blossom rolled her eyes at this great sword immortal who was clearly participating in the battle half-heartedly. "Yuen, why don't you hurry up and bring him to Gloomy Paradise?" "That won't do," Yumu chimed in. "You're right." Standing in place, Fernand didn't move an inch as he spoke in perfect Howren human language with a bitter face. These words were directed at Yu Yuan. He knew better than anyone that a dense net of sword intent had gradually filled his flesh and internal organs. The sword net seemed to be integrated into every part of his body, every meridian, and contained its own mysteries. It was as if the great Tao of the heavenly water sword had manifested, and was imprinted with endless power. The aura of the sword net made him realize that as long as he dared to move his limbs, the terrifying sword intent within the sword net would seep into his flesh and worsen his injuries. This was also the reason why he couldn't do anything about Huang Baiqi's attack even though he had sensed it. After being stabbed by Huang Baijin, as long as it wasn't his heart, everything else would be fine. It would just worsen his injuries. However, if he moved, the net of sword intent that Yumu had deliberately woven would lose its balance because of Huang Baiqi's attack, and he would be finished. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Streaks of crimson light and wisps of refined spirit power, mixed with Yu Yuan's soul power, seeped into Fernand's flesh and blood with great fanfare. Yu Yuan, who had a grim expression on his face, had a profound understanding of the existence of the sword net and the mysteries of the Tao of the sword it contained. What he was doing now was trying to break the heavenly water net that Yu Mu had left in Fernand's body with his own strength, his understanding of the Tao of the sword, and his understanding of various powers. That way, the Shura general would be able to move about safely and escape Yu Mu's sealing and subsequent killing move. As long as the net didn't break, Fernand's life would always be in Yu Mu's hands. Senior Hong, if you have the ability to break it, you can take him away. Yu Mu seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Eyes filled with joy, he waved his hand casually and said, "You're no match for him, Lu Rue. Hurry up and back off." Streaks of copious sword power actually came from the thin sword that Huang Baichi had loosened. The sword suddenly flashed with dazzling lightning and flew among the numerous golden stone beasts that Yu Yuan had transformed into with his flesh power, trying to devour Yu Yuan's flesh power. He controlled Huang Baichi's sword and used the power of lightning to help Lu Rue escape from Lady Peach's colorful sea of clouds. Lu Rue, who was under great pressure, suddenly found that the surging flesh power and violent golden stone beasts were no longer around him. Lu Rue was tactful. He bowed to Yu Mu, turned around, and left the meteor. Huang Baichi hesitated for a moment. He didn't even dare to hold his sword. Like Lu Rue, he turned around and flew to another meteor. From dozens of meters away, he fixed his eyes on Yu Yuan. "Yu Mu, you're putting on airs now, aren't you?" Yu Yuan curled his lips. "I can't help it. I was raised by my sect, so I have to do things for my sect," Yu Mu said with a bitter face. Only in front of Yu Yuan would he appear so lazy and helpless. "Actually, I'm very afraid that Senior will poison me." Poison? Yu Yuan went blank for a moment and thought to himself, "Is this guy trying to remind me of something?" Of course he knew that Yu Mu had already done him a favor. Otherwise, Fernand would have died long ago, instead of being sealed by the net of swords inside of him. All of a sudden, the cry of a crane echoed out from the distance. Author's note, third update. Chapter 1048. The crane's cries were still coming from the distant starry river. However, every master in the battle, whether they were young spirit cultivators of the human clan, blood warriors of the alien clan, or great demons like the golden crag beast, keenly smelled that their vitality seemed to be slowly passing away the moment they heard the crane cry. Even experts like Jin Li, the 9th-grade golden stone beast, and Yu Mu, the heavenly water sword, felt their hearts tighten. Crane of death. The mountain-like golden stone beast shattered the Star Race's shield of light and knocked away Ace's huge star wheel. Its brutal and ferocious eyes should have been even crazier, but at this moment, they suddenly became sober and calm. Jin Li hastily searched for Yu Mu. Then, he saw that Yu Mu, who was surrounded by water dragons of sword intent and in the surging colorful cloud sea, had also withdrawn his previous carelessness. The two of them looked at each other from afar. "Let's go." The human and the demon instantly transmitted their orders with their soul wills. Crack! An 8th-grade golden stone beast crushed the old Star Race woman's neck with its teeth. However, it didn't go on to attack another Star Race warrior. Instead, it turned into a streak of golden lightning and instantly flew towards the floating meteor outside the starship. Swish! Swish! The golden stone beasts that had been hunting the Star Race quickly returned to the meteors under their feet. Jin Li, the strongest among them, clenched his 4 enormous claws and turned them into hooves. Stepping on the 4 largest meteors, he shouted in the ancient demon language, "Return to your positions." All of the meteors floated towards him from different directions like chess pieces falling onto a chessboard. In the blink of an eye, the meteors scattered and formed a complete goblin temple, which was known for its speed. Gale formation. The meteors formed by the meteors looked like a sea of golden light. They had long since chosen a direction and flew towards a pitch-black area. Almost at the same time, Yu Mu's figure flashed and easily left the colorful cloud sea. A moment later, he reappeared on the meteor where Huang Baichi, Lu Rue, and the woman from the Frigid Moon sect were standing. Huang Baiqi's lost sword turned into a streak of lightning and instantly returned. Fernan, whether you can survive or not will depend on Senior's ability. He grasped the hilt of the heavenly water sword that resembled a river and slowly pushed it back into the scabbard. He bowed to Yu Yuan and said, "I'm very sorry. I can't repay the favor you gave me 300 years ago in this life." The sound of flowing water came from the meteorite under his feet. Dozens of emerald, azure, and cyan rivers magically interwove with each other and carried the meteor towards the cluster of meteors where the golden stone beasts were at an unimaginable speed. They didn't know when the white crane that was spreading death would arrive. It was also unclear whether there were other experts from the Shunhun sect or major cultivators from the Tongtian Trading Company with the Crane of Death. However, he knew that since the Tongtian Trading Company and the Shunhun sect had chosen to annihilate the domain of annihilation and invited all the heroes of the alien races, they must have made some solid arrangements. Yumu and Jinli weren't stupid. They knew that they were only here to gather information. If they were careless and trapped by the Crane of Death, at the edge of the domain of annihilation, they wouldn't be able to escape when the experts from the Tongtian Trading Company and the Shunhun sect arrived. Yumu is pretty straightforward. Madame Peach Blossom was in the depths of the surging rainbow-colored sea of clouds. She stood under a peach blossom tree that was shining with divine light and revealing boundless gorgeous multicolored clouds. Her stomach was filled with unhappiness. She was just about to show her true strength and compete with Yumu when Yumu left without saying a word. She felt like she had punched a cotton ball with all her strength. She had nowhere to vent her anger. Big Brother, at this time, Pattinson of the Shadow Clan finally dared to leave the Dark Paradise. He landed on the meteor where Ronnie had died tragically. He knelt on one knee and pressed his hands against Ronnie's mangled chest, making a futile effort. Ronnie's innards had been churned into paste by Huang Baiqi's thunder sword. Even his soul had been extinguished by the thunder. No matter how one looked at it, Ronnie was dead. There was no chance of him coming back to life. Boom! Elena, who now possessed a rank 8 bloodline, was finally free from the shackles. She landed heavily next to Yu Yuan and Fernan. "Old man, are you all right? You should be able to live, right?" Fernand's mouth was full of bloody foam. There was a sword hole in his chest, and he was bleeding non-stop. The Azura general stood straight like a spear. He wanted to say 1,000 things, but he couldn't say a word. Because at this time, Yu Yuan's power and Yu Mu's sword net made contact for the first time. Fernand's nerves and heartstrings were stretched taut because of this. Benin, we're really lucky. Hart looked at the 3 bloody corpses in front of him from a corner of the Star Race's warship. His lips trembled as he thought of the 3 Star Race clansmen being torn apart by the golden stone beasts. He only had a rank 7 bloodline, but he was lucky enough to survive the charge of the Howran army. Benin, whose face was as white as jade and covered in sweat, finally let out a sigh of relief. She almost couldn't stand straight. Hearing Hart's relieved exclamation, an extremely tired expression appeared on Benin's face. Of course, Hart didn't know that the reason why they were safe and sound and hadn't been targeted by the golden stone beasts and the cultivators from the tranquil continent was because Benin had been using her bloodline talent, which had been awakened not long ago, to keep them in a blind spot. The golden stone beasts and the human young god grand cultivators that swarmed into the warship didn't even notice them first. They had become very inconspicuous and inconspicuous. This was actually a unique bloodline talent of the Void Demons. Many of my clansmen died. Wilson, clad in heavy armor and wielding an enormous broadsword, stabbed the body of a dead golden crag beast a few times, then suddenly raised his head to look at Benin. This could have been avoided if we hadn't chased after the Grey Paradise. Benin lowered her head guiltily. 7 of the 12 star dome cannons were destroyed. The defensive crystal of the warship was seriously damaged. 15 of our clansmen died, including 3 8th-grade bloodline experts. Asa, who had placed a huge spinning star wheel on the special stone platform of the warship, sighed with sorrow and sorrow. At this moment, he also thought that Benin's sudden visit must have been malicious. If it weren't for Benin, Wilson probably wouldn't have chased after the Grey Paradise so rashly, and they wouldn't have run into the Howran hunters. When we reach the Annihilation Star Domain and meet your teacher, I hope he can give me a reasonable explanation, Wilson said coldly. Benin bowed her head and didn't say anything. Then, under Wilson and Asa's shocked and angry gazes, she suddenly grabbed Hart, who didn't know what to do, and flew back to the Grey Paradise like a pair of dazzling wings of light. Wilson's face was livid. That bitch didn't give me face. In order to please Benin and show his strength, he had ordered the Howran hunters to chase after the Grey Paradise, and they had almost been killed by the Howran hunters. He had already paid such a heavy price. Considering that Fisher was Benin's teacher, he didn't pursue the matter immediately. Benin, on the other hand, didn't know what was good for him. When the crisis had just been resolved, he immediately left with Hart. This was simply a resounding slap to his face, causing him to feel a burning pain. This girl is really not likable. Asa was also angry in his heart. Benin was clearly using them. He was using them to help the bandits in the Dark Paradise, or perhaps humans? After the matter was over, he did not give any explanation and just left. Did he think that the people of the Coleman tribe were all fools? Clang! Wilson threw the huge broadsword in his hand to the ground. Enraged, he rushed out of the dilapidated ancient starship and chased after Benin and Hart. Repair the starship, heal the wounded, and dispose of the Grand Demon's remains. Asa left these words in a hurry. Worried that the treacherous hunters of Howran might have left something behind to ambush whales, he rushed out of the starship as well. Wilson was the key to the prosperity of the Coleman clan. As an elder, he had to know what was important at all times. That man. Standing at the front of the starship, Becker looked at Yu Yuan from afar, his eyes glittering like stars. He was from the Curtis clan, the most powerful clan of the Starfolk. The information he had access to was not something that the declining Coleman clan could compare to. He hadn't paid much attention to Lady Peach or Yu Yuan before, so he had overlooked many things. Not long ago, Yu Yuan had attacked Lu Rue and released the baleful demon cauldron on the woman from the frigid dark sect. At this moment, Becker couldn't help but think of the name of a person from Howran heaven and earth that his family had told him to be careful. Yu Yuan. That should be it. Baker took a deep breath. After Wilson and Asa left, he also left the damaged warship. How did it go? Hu Kaiyun, who had withdrawn the colorful sea of clouds into her body, came behind Yu Yuan and glanced at the extremely nervous Fernan and the focused Yu Yuan. I've heard some rumors about the sword net that Yu Mu left behind. You can't break it with brute force. If you don't find the trick, it will only cause the opposite effect. Maybe you want to save him out of kindness, but the result is that he will die faster. Madame Peach Blossom kindly reminded him. If Fernand's eyes could speak, they would be saying, "Yes, yes, listen to her. Kid, listen to her. Don't do anything stupid." "Old man, why do you look so scared?" Elena asked curiously. Fernand wanted to cry, but had no tears. With a whoosh, Benin and the silver scale Hart landed on the Dark Paradise. However, they didn't land on the continent where Yu Yuan and the others were. This was because Hart's bloodline was too weak. If he left the protection of the Dark Paradise, he would be eroded by the power of the universe. Benin. Wilson of the Coleman family chased Li Yao from the Star Clan's stationary warship to the Grey Paradise in fury. He shouted, "I've changed my mind. You better give me an explanation right now. Are you helping the bandits, or are you helping those two damn bastards?" "It has nothing to do with you." Benin's expression was cold. "Ha! It has nothing to do with me? So many of my clansmen died, a few Star Dome divine cannons were destroyed, and my starship was damaged. Now you're saying it has nothing to do with me? Wilson's expression was vicious. Chapter 1049. Due to the death of that ancestor, the Coleman family was rapidly declining. Today, this once glorious family could no longer compete with the first-tier families in terms of wealth and manpower. This warship that was heading to the Annihilation Star Zone and the Star Vault Divine Cannons were one of the few things that the Coleman family could show their strength. In fact, they bore the heavy responsibility of protecting Beck and keeping up appearances for him. The Tongtian Trading Company had actually invited the Curtis family, where Beck was from. Beck was the representative of the Astrals and the Curtis family. Since their family's territory was next to the domain of Annihilation, they were allowed to act as Beck's protectors. They hadn't even reached the domain of Annihilation yet, but this warship, which had cost them a fortune, was already so damaged. The Star Dome cannons were destroyed one after another. Wilson's heart bled. Naturally, he began to vent his anger on Benin. You were the one who ordered us to go after the Grey Paradise. I didn't force you. Benin looked calm. He wasn't scared or panicked at all because of Wilson's rage. It was just an accident that we ran into Howang's hunter. I didn't expect it to happen. You're the reason we're going after them, Asa said in a low voice. Benin curled his lips and didn't say anything. Come back to the warship with us. We'll enter the domain of Annihilation together. When we see your teacher, I'll talk to her in person. Asa was afraid that Wilson would act rashly, so he gave him a stern glare as he spoke. Also, it's not safe for you to stay in the Grey Paradise. I don't think so. Benin's attitude was cold. I want to know who you want to help. Bandits or humans? Wilson said angrily. I can't tell you. Benin snorted. Then don't blame me for... The barrel of explosives in Wilson's heart was ignited. His eyes flashed fiercely and his face became fierce. Stop! Beck's dignified reprimand rang out. He landed in the gloomy paradise and stood between Wilson and Asa. I only have one question. Is that human young man? He looked expectantly at Benin. Beining knew who he was and his family. Facing the man from the strongest family of the Star Clan, Beining hesitated for a while, and then nodded to confirm his assumption. Then, he added, Teacher asked me to follow him to the Annihilation Star area. Understood. Baker took a deep breath and immediately ordered Asa and Wilson, return to the warship and stop watching her. Also, please remember that I am the emissary of the Star Tribe. Asa turned pale with fright. Wilson was also stunned. This was the first time Beck, who had always been amiable and had never made things difficult for them, had spoken with such a stern expression. While the two of them were stunned, they suddenly realized the other party's identity. The Curtis family. Wilson still wanted to understand and ask more questions, but he was stopped by Asa's eyes. Sorry, we'll go back now. Please don't be angry. Asa grabbed Wilson's arm with one hand, and just like how Benin took heart away, he pulled Wilson away without giving him a chance to speak. You can go to the Annihilation Star area first. You don't have to accompany me, Baker added. When Asa, who was leaving, heard this, his heart sank to the bottom of the valley. He was both terrified and confused. What was going on? On the other side, a man with sickly pale skin wearing a gray feathered cloak appeared next to Lady Peach out of thin air. He squinted his eyes, looking at Hu Kaiyun with a picky gaze. Then, he let out a strange, mocking smile. I didn't expect you to win. Shouldn't you have known? Hu Kaiyun smiled like a flower. The inner demon swallowed her original self, causing her realm to drop first, and then return to freedom with a stronger combat strength. It was a logical thing to do. When the White Crane left the starry Ash Sea region with her, it had guessed that such a day would come. However, it did not expect it to happen so quickly and cause such a big disturbance. Trash Ronnie, useless calf, and a White Crane didn't answer her. He tilted his head and looked at the dead bandit king, cursed calf, and finally looked at Fernan. He muttered to himself, "The Azure race is still stronger than the Shadow race and the Moonlight people. To be able to survive until now under Yumu's heavenly water net, it's not bad." He commented to himself. Lord White Crane. Baker flew over from the gray paradise. He didn't step on the meteor. He just stood in the desolate sea of stars and nodded at White Crane with a smile. "I've come on behalf of the Curtis family. Amen." "You've had a hard journey," White Crane replied indifferently. Then, he looked around. "How could you be so careless? That guy, Gene Lee, likes to play guerrilla warfare. Every time he shoots, he changes his location. You just had to bump into him." TSK. White Crane shook his head. He didn't seem to care. He even seemed to be taking pleasure in their misfortune. Calf has been possessed by the moon demon, Ronnie is dead, and Fernan is the only one left. Hu Kaiyun smiled and said, "I know that the 3 great bandit kings have plundered many years ago, and they have buried all of the resources they have plundered in various places. White Crane, if Fernan is also dead, then your efforts will be in vain." Elena looked expectantly at the Death Crane who had betrayed the Goblin Temple and been chased by the Goblin Temple for many years, but had become stronger and stronger. White Crane finally looked at Fernan and, "Yu Yuan. I can't help him. If my bloodline power enters his body, he will die in a second." White Crane didn't care. "Since you know my name, you shouldn't have any hope in me. I'm good at spreading death, not healing the wounded and dying. He's just a bandit leader. If he dies, then he dies. Do you think I only invited the 3 bandit kings?" He pulled the corners of his mouth disdainfully. Then, he reluctantly tidied his clothes and pretended to bow slightly to Yu Yuan, who had his back to him and was helping Fernan break the sky water net. He said seriously, "Tongtian Trading Company, White Crane, is ordered to take you to the Annihilation Star Zone. This infamous Death Crane of the Howran and outer space treated Yu Yuan like this." His reluctance caused everyone present to be dumbfounded. Hu Kaiyun was no exception. She had thought that Yu Yuan, who controlled 2 dragon beheading platforms, must be of noble status and deeply connected to the Shenhun sect. But she hadn't expected that even the Death Crane would carefully bow to Yu Yuan. What did Yu Yuan do to deserve this? Pattinson, Elena, Benin, Hart, and even Beck of the Curtis family were shocked speechless by the Death Crane's action. The Death Crane, who had advanced to rank 9 bloodline, was famous for his recent slaughter. He didn't just kill the outsider experts. Many of the hunters and greater demons from the 5 great powers had died at his hands after he charged out of the vast sea fortress. This was also the reason why the 3 bandit kings, who weren't originally in the Grey Paradise, had decided to hide after he had expressed his intentions when he had gone to the Grey Paradise alone. They were truly afraid of. Yu Yuan suddenly turned around and looked at the great demon in front of him in surprise. "Do you have to be so polite? I'm just following orders." White Crane's eyes drooped as he said helplessly, "My master told me to be more respectful to you. Of course I have to." He thought to himself, the Shenhun sect is the military support of the Tongtian Trading Company. My master is counting on the Shenhun sect to create a supreme divine position for him. You're the one who appointed me, and you're the ruler of the forbidden land of the fallen moons. How could I dare to be arrogant in front of you? White Crane thought to himself, crestfallen. However, Hu Kaiyun was even more surprised after hearing his words. The white-robed man with the flute was the most powerful guest elder of the Tongtian Trading Company. He had a very high chance of entering the nascent divinity realm. Even the 300-year-old drug god Haunch didn't have enough influence to make that person pay so much attention to him. I need time to wear down the heavenly water net inside of him. I can't move his body so. Yu Yuan frowned. White Crane nodded to show that he understood. It's simple. Just get this meteor to the Grey Paradise. With these words, he didn't make any movement, but the meteor that covered an area of several acres took everyone to the dark paradise at a slow but steady speed. White Crane shrugged. It doesn't matter if he dies or not. You can do whatever you want. Chapter 1050. Inside the body of the bandit Fernand. Hundreds and thousands of sword lights were like numerous fine streams that interweaved into a complicated and profound sword net. This sword net was called Heavenly Water Net. The sword lights filled every inch of Fernand's flesh, meridians, and bones. They were like long, shiny ropes that bound Fernand. Yu Yuan's flesh aura, soul energy, and spirit energy roamed inside Fernand's body. He was the first to sense the loss of his flesh aura. His flesh aura was silently absorbed by the magical sword net. This caused the sword net that was filled with Fernand's flesh aura to become even brighter and more mystical. Yu Yuan's soul consciousness acutely realized that the sword lights of the sword net were like dead knots and door locks that bound the rank 9 bloodline Platinum Azura's bloodline crystal chains. The foreign race's innate divine abilities were closely related to their bloodline crystal chains. Fernand couldn't do anything when his bloodline crystal chains were restricted. Every time he circulated the refined flesh aura in his heart, he would be devoured by the sword net before he could transmit it. Yu Yuan's soul consciousness roamed around the heavenly water net. He was certain that this unique sword net had the ability to absorb flesh aura and strengthen itself. No matter if it was Fernand or his chi and blood, they would all help to strengthen the sword net. The sword net would only become even more impenetrable. After understanding this, he first withdrew his flesh aura that contained the wonders of life from Fernand's body. He only used his refined spirit energy and soul consciousness to continue probing. Soon, he determined that this sword net called Heavenly Water Net was a perfect whole. If he used his power to cut any part of the sword net would explode, and the terrifying sword energy it contained would activate in a breath's time. Fernand couldn't move. He couldn't use his flesh aura to defend himself. There was a high chance that he would die the moment the sword energy exploded. Yu Mu's sword light still contains his own soul. Since he's outside, he should be able to sense my probing through this sword net. Suddenly, a thought floated into Yu Yuan's mind. It was also at this moment that he seemed to hear a gentle and lazy laughter from the weird, heavenly water net. As soon as the laughter sounded, Yu Yuan's expression immediately became extremely solemn. He pondered silently for a long time before he came up with a bold idea. Soul-breaking slash! Without swinging the scabbard, he pressed his palms against Fernand's chest. Under Fernand's frightened gaze, Yu Yuan closed his eyes. The Yin deity in the small world of knowledge quietly arrived at the center of his palm. At the same time, the miniature Yin deity in the form of a soul spirit began to use its arms as swords and unleash the soul-severing slash towards Fernand's chest. As the Yin deity swung its swords, the sword soul in Yu Yuan's arm bone responded. Immediately, thousands of tiny crimson sword lights penetrated into Fernand's body like steel needles that were 100 times finer. The exquisite sword art of the soul-severing slash was unleashed by his Yin deity in a different way. It was trying to separate Yu Mu's soul from the heavenly water net itself. Thousands of tiny crimson sword lights poured into Fernand's internal organs from the surface of his chest like sparkling white streams. Like silk being peeled from a cocoon, they cleansed Yu Mu's soul. They didn't slash apart the heavenly water net, nor did they tear apart the sparkling white sword lights. Instead, they penetrated it and destroyed it from the inside. Yu Mu! The Yin deity growled. Within Fernand's body, within the sword net, and within the sparkling white streams, he saw hundreds of Yu Mus sitting quietly at the interweaving points of the sparkling white sword lights. Every interweaving point of the sword lights seemed to be an acupoint of the sword net, where a Yu Mu was sitting. Those were the soul wills that Yu Mu had left behind. They were the secret that allowed him to control the heavenly water net from thousands of kilometers away. At this moment, the Yumu sitting at the interweaving points of the sword lights smiled bitterly as he watched the crimson sword lights flood into his body and force him to leave. Sigh. The hundreds of Yumus sighed in unison. The moment the countless crimson sword lights closed in on them, they suddenly disappeared. Like bubbles in water, they popped one after another. The heavenly water sword Yumu's soul wills returned to his body in an instant. Fernand's body trembled slightly as he sensed that part of the power that had been restraining his soul and flesh aura seemed to have left. However, the sword net was still there. Drenched in sweat, Yu Yuan took a deep breath. After using thousands of tiny crimson sword lights to execute the soul-breaking slash with his Een deity to lock onto the interweaving points of the heavenly water net and force Yumu's soul wills to leave, Yu Yuan was almost exhausted. His flesh aura and spiritual energy had already been extracted from Fernand's body. Only wisps of his soul wills were left to wander within the sword net and continue to comprehend and examine it. He discovered that even though Yumu's soul wills were gone, the sword net that was full of power still remained unmoved. His realm was not high enough. Using the essence of Een Sunflower, his spiritual energy, flesh aura, and soul power to form the crimson soul-breaking sword lights, he only managed to sever Yumu's soul wills from the sword lights. It was undoubtedly a fool's dream to completely eliminate and destroy that magical sword net. Poison, battered, he suddenly remembered what Yumu had said before the crane's cry rang out. Stunned, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Then, under the surprised and puzzled gazes of Hu Kaiyun, White Crane, Fernand and Elena, he summoned the pill furnace, Flowing Flame. 9 dots of flame lit up in his palm, revolving around the pill furnace that was slowly shrinking. Dozens of bottles and jars containing poison were poured into the pill furnace like smoke. The spirit herbs and colorful liquids he had collected in his early years were manipulated and adjusted by him in a dazzling manner. At the most precise time and with the most exquisite method, they were thrown into the pill furnace, causing a series of sparks to fly in all directions. Haunch! Drug God! Hu Kaiyun and the White Crane softly called out. The White Crane's previous carelessness was swept away. When Yu Yuan began to refine medicine, his face was filled with sincere respect. In any profession, those who could reach perfection in their skills were worthy of respect. In the field of medicine refinement, Yu Yuan had once climbed to the peak. He was a divine-grade medicine refinement master who was respected by tens of thousands. For example, the primordial spirit of cultivators, the drug god of the demon race, and the supreme rank 10 bloodline experts of the foreign races. They didn't have to wait for too long before Yu Yuan carefully took out a bright red pill that looked like a vermilion fruit and was wrapped in colorful mist from the pill furnace named Flowing Flame. Then, he forced it into Fernand's mouth. There is no time to delay, swallow it immediately. Seeing this scene, Hu Caiyun's mouth trembled slightly. Without thinking, she took 3 steps back. The White Crane, who had the reputation of the Crane of Death, used his demon soul to feel the mist outside the bright red pill. He suddenly felt dizzy. He cursed in his heart and hurriedly stood next to Hu Kaiyun. Fernand looked at the pill in front of his mouth with a hopeless expression. He didn't dare to move at all. Oh, I forgot that you can't do anything. Yu Yuan patted his forehead apologetically. Then, he pried open Fernand's mouth and put the bright red pill in. He even put more than half of his fist into Fernand's mouth, so that the pill could quickly slide into Fernand's intestines. If this pill can't break the sword net, then I can't do anything. Yu Yuan's face was full of disdain. He first shook off Fernand's saliva, then took out a clean handkerchief and seriously wiped it. Yumu's heavenly water net. I used poison to seep into every sword light river and corrode the impermanence of the water inside, so this sword net was poisoned and broken. he casually explained, not caring if the others could understand. That guy left this sword net on purpose, he muttered to himself. Breaking the heavenly water net was a battle of wits and courage with Yumu. This little sword cultivator was very shy 300 years ago, but after becoming a great sword immortal, he had power and methods that made Yu Yuan sigh in amazement. He used his Een soul to wield the soul-breaking slash, and used the many tiny crimson sword beams to force Yumu's soul to leave. In fact, it was a kind of self-tempering. Yumu seemed to be helping Fernand sort out his sword Dao through the sword net in his body, telling him how to use the sword arts in the most exquisite way. This was a different kind of teaching of sword Dao. As for the poison, it should be to confirm his identity and see if he was the medicine god Hanch from 300 years ago. Brat, you sure have a lot of tricks up your sleeve now. Yu Yuan cursed inwardly. When he felt the sword net in Fernand's body melt because of the bright red poison pill, he saw through all of Yumu's thoughts. He also knew that Yumu was using his own method to repay the kindness of giving him the pill 300 years ago. Thousands of miles away, leaning against a protruding rock, the heavenly water sword narrowed his eyes and looked at the dark galaxy. After a shudder, his eyes revealed a slightly happy light. It really is the medicine god Senior's reincarnation. He adjusted his posture and pressed his other back against the rock. Leaving Fernand and the sword net behind, he had the intention of testing him. If Yu Yuan had really comprehended the heaven-raising sword and had enough wisdom, he should be able to use the soul-breaking slash to strip away the soul he left behind and separate the soul in his sword net from the sword energy. Regardless of whether Yu Yuan was the medicine god or not, to be able to do this step was considered to have gained his approval. The second step, he deliberately mentioned poison because he had comprehended the heavenly water net back then, and part of the credit was due to Yu Yuan in his previous life. If Yu Yuan was really the medicine god Hanch and could refine poison pills, with his reminder, he should be able to think of using poison to permeate the sword light stream and slowly melt the corrosive sword intent, breaking through all aspects. If he succeeded, it would mean that Yu Yuan was really the reincarnation of the medicine god, and was the Hanch from back then. Yumu did not believe the rumors outside and did not believe in reincarnation. He wanted to confirm it in his own way. Since it's really you, I won't get involved in the Annihilation Starfield anymore. As Yumu thought, he patted his butt and stood up. He scratched his ear and said, "I'll go back and report first." Chapter 1051. On the gloomy paradise, Fernand heaved a long sigh of relief. His tensed nerves were finally relaxed. Inside his body, after he was forced to swallow the bright red pill that Yu Yuan had just refined, the dense and complicated sword net was slowly penetrated by the poisonous light and gradually melted away. He could clearly feel the disappearance of the sword net's binding force. Who the hell was this guy? He looked at the exhausted Yu Yuan with complicated and inexplicable feelings, his mind blank. Isn't he a human? Why did he save me? Wasn't Elena being held hostage? What the F***ck is going on? If it weren't for the fact that he had just survived a disaster, the grumpy Shura general would have already been shouting crazily. Are you all right? As he roared in his heart, Elena smelled his chi and blood circulating again. Her eyes suddenly lit up with ecstasy. Old man, you survived, didn't you? Fernand's legs went soft. He was about to sit down, but when he saw the death crane looking at him with a strange expression, he quickly stood up straight. I'm fine. He pointed at Yu Yuan and asked his daughter, who the hell is he? Let's talk somewhere else. Elena looked at Yu Yuan with a slightly shy and grateful expression. Then, her figure flickered and she rushed towards a square stone building in the dark paradise. Fernand was full of questions. He first consulted the white crane. Seeing the white crane nod, he cupped his hands towards Yu Yuan with the etiquette of the human race. Only then did he leave with Elena. No matter what, he was well aware that Yu Yuan had saved him. You live up to your reputation. The White Crane shook its head and praised Yu Yuan's superb alchemy skills. The drug god is indeed the drug god. In my opinion, you are still better than your senior brother Zhong Chichen. Zhong Chichen, that fellow, is engrossed in cultivation and has not persisted in the path of alchemy. As a great demon of the Goblin Temple, he had lived for nearly 1,000 years. He had lived even longer than Yu Yuan, who had lived 2 lives. In his previous life, Hanch, Zhong Chichen, and even the Two People's teacher, this Crane of Death, had all heard of his name. It was just that it did not have much contact with him before. In this life, you seem to be even more relaxed and casual when it comes to alchemy, Hu Kaiyun commented. 300 years ago, because Hanch hadn't stepped on the path of cultivation, he had to rely on fire-attributed crystals to refine medicines. Because his soul hadn't been refined, his exquisite use of medicinal herbs was far from what it was now. For example, just now, Yu Yuan had only used less than an hour to form a pill. If it was the old Hanch, it would have been impossible. The combination of a pharmacist and a cultivator could greatly increase the efficiency of refining medicine. Their control of the fire could also reach a wondrous realm where they could do whatever they wanted without the slightest mistake. That's true. Yu Yuan nodded. He was still feeling the ease of refining medicine and thinking about the wonders of Yu Mu's heavenly water net. Not in the mood to talk, he flashed and sat down on a high platform not far away. He motioned for Pattinson of the Shadow Clan to throw the meteor that White Crane had dragged over out of Grey Paradise. Pattinson, who had lost his brother, did as he was told in low spirits. After the meteor rolled into the River of Stars, Pattinson silently found a random place to sit down. We're almost at the Annihilation Star Zone. White Crane looked around and found that only Hu Kaiyun could still talk. Benin, Hart, and other weaker fellows couldn't enter his eyes at all. Why are you following those bandits? I'm not following the bandits. I'm following Yu Yuan. Hu Kaiyun had nothing to do, and the two of them were familiar with each other, so they started chatting. White Crane, I want to join the Shenhun sect. Can you recommend me? He Sun invited you back then. Didn't you refuse? White Crane asked curiously. I wasn't the same person back then, Hu Kaiyun said with a smile. White Crane immediately understood. My master and I are from the Tongtian Trading Company. We have nothing to do with the Shenhun sect. If you want to join the Shenhun sect and be recommended, then... He looked at Yu Yuan. Hu Kaiyun understood and nodded slightly. I didn't misjudge you. In the northern part of the tranquil continent, the Red Devil School, a huge bronze bell floated at the mouth of a volcano spewing lava. Yuan Lianyao's Yin divinity formed lotus flowers that bloomed inside the bronze bell. Inside the bronze bell, many exquisite patterns of light merged into the lotus flowers. After an unknown period of time, the red lotus flowers merged, shrank, and refined into Yuan Lianyao's humanoid Yin divinity. At the foot of the mountain, Yuan Lianyao's true body floated half a meter above a river of flames. Fang Yao, with a big bald head, stood guard next to her. At this moment, he watched her Yin divinity refine the bronze bell. Fang Yao grinned and nodded. This bronze bell is a Heaven Grade 6 spirit artifact. It's yours now. Whoosh. Yuan Lianyao's Yin divinity returned to her true body, and the bronze bell fell under her feet and merged with her flesh aura and soul power. Thank you, my lord. She grinned, and the surrounding dozens of kilometers seemed to become brighter. In the nearby mountains and caves, the disciples and disciples of the Crimson Fiend sect all opened their eyes and looked at the most brilliant blazing red lotus of the Crimson Fiend sect with eyes full of admiration. Yuan Lianyao, who had broken through to the Soul Wander realm a long time ago and was highly regarded by Fang Yao and the Demon Seed, won the favor of many disciples and elders in the Red Devil School with her extraordinary talent exquisite realm, and beautiful appearance. Her pursuers included experts from the Heavenly Evil sect, the Dueling School, and the Devil's Palace. However, she lived in seclusion all year round and rarely saw outsiders. When she left the Red Devil School, it was under Fang Yao's arrangement that she went to dangerous places to temper her realm. Most of the time, she returned with a full load. The demon seed is looking for you. Fang Yao rose, turned into a cluster of burning flames, and suddenly disappeared into the river of flames below. Yuan Lianyao followed him and went underground. In the hidden palace below, the demon seed Zhou Tsangmin's true body sat in a huge magma pool, absorbing the blazing flame energy to continue tempering his soul and body. Our men in the outer world encountered Yu Yuan and sent a message back to us. Zhou Tsangmin, whose yang divinity also soared in the galaxy, looked at Yuan Lianyao in the magma pool and smiled with relief. That guy is not only alive, but he's living very well. Hearing this, Yuan Lianyao sighed in relief. Thank you for telling me, Lord State Preceptor. You've made good progress. Work hard and try to enter outer space as a yang divinity within 30 years, Zhou Tsangmin encouraged. How can it be so fast? Yuan Lianyao was stunned. No, today is different. With the return of the Shunhun sect and the conflict with the 5 supreme forces, many enlightened realm cultivators and yang divinities will die in outer space. Geniuses of the new generation like you, Chen Qinyan, Lu Ying, Zhan Tianxiang, and Zhao Yafu will be able to gather more fortune and break through faster. Zhou Tsangmin told him the secret that had been kept a secret. And Ziqing of the Blood God is the fastest to break through to the yang divinity realm in this generation. The Blood God's secret arts are special. She refined a lot of outsider blood essence and directly soared into the sky along the star path opened by the Shunhun sect. At this point, even he, as a demon seed, was amazed. What? Yuan Lianyao was also shocked. As the next successor of the Blood God, and Ziqing's cultivation talent was known by everyone. But wasn't it too fast? Although everyone knew that the Blood God's secret arts were a shortcut and that the speed of advancement was equal to the risk of losing control, it was still amazing that Ziqing could condense a yang divinity so quickly. That girl is indeed extraordinary. Zhou Tsangmin narrowed his eyes and explained, the star sea outside Howran is no longer controlled by the 5 supreme forces. The 2 star paths are opened by us, the Shunhun sect, and the Tongtian Trading Company. The 5 supreme forces and the Shunhun sect will definitely have an even bigger conflict. However, in the future, the battlefield will probably shift to outer space, and not vast oceans territory. After all, everyone's roots are in Howran. No one wants to destroy the mountains and rivers of Howran and lose the natural advantage of the central world because of this bloody battle. And Ziqing was the first to rush out. Chao Jiazi was even older and left almost at the same time. Chen Qinyan, Lu Ying, and the other geniuses are refining their souls in the land of terror. They should enter the Soul Wander realm right after you. Zhou Tsangmin explained the current situation in detail. Yuan Lianyao was fascinated and nodded from time to time, her eyes shining with desire. I'll do my best. I've been looking forward to the brilliant stars outside for a long time. In one of the 7 cold abyss mouths, the absolute frost world. Standing on top of an iceberg, Lin Zhuyun clutched her chest and coughed crazily. Streaks of bright red blood flowed out from the corners of her mouth, instantly turning into icicles and then exploding into ice shards. She slowly sat down and began to circulate her spells to calm the rampaging power of extreme cold. On another ice mountain, a white-robed man holding a bamboo flute looked at her as if she were dead. He shook his head and said indifferently, "If you can't condense a yang divinity, you'll die. And you'll soon." A hint of despair and pain flashed through Lin Zhuyun's eyes. She fell silent. If she didn't know that she was in a terrible situation, she wouldn't have listened to President Li and risked rushing out from the depths of the 9 hell-cold abyss. Of course she knew how dangerous it was for someone who hadn't condensed a young divinity to reach the stars. But she couldn't wait. The difference between you and Yu Yuan is that the kid has forged a life altar in his body. Because of that life altar, and because he cultivates the fiend body refining art, his body is stronger than the outsiders and great monsters. That's why he can endure the power of the primal chaos Kuan. But you, the white-robed man shook his head again. Your body can't keep up with your cultivation and the cold power you've condensed. The primal chaos Kuan's gift requires a body strong enough to bear it. That's a star behemoth. It's too radical for you to use the power it gave you to improve your cultivation and gain super strength. I'll show you the way. That kid has officially entered the domain of annihilation. If you're willing to kneel down and beg for his help, I can ask that stupid crane to take him to this icy world. His life altar and consort Han in the fiend demon cauldron can keep you alive, the white-robed man suggested kindly. No need. Chapter 1052. Yu Yuan's Yin soul came out of the fluorescent energy shield recklessly and was exposed to the turbulent universe filled with filthy supernatural energy. The energy that was mixed with all kinds of strange power wrapped around his Yin soul like a thick swamp. His Yin soul sizzled and melted at the first moment. An indescribable pain burst from the depths of his soul. Even his true body sitting on the high platform of the gray paradise felt it. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Whoosh! The Yin soul suddenly returned, turning into an invisible light and returning to his small world in the sea of consciousness. The life altar in his body was operating, refining the blood essence of the alien race. The weak soul power contained within was released, hurriedly repairing the damage to his Yin spirit. At the same time, he took a soul-nourishing pill to help his Yin soul recover. It's still not good. Murmuring to himself, Yu Yuan gazed at the boundless starry river. Since heavenly devils from the outer realms were able to fly in the dangerous starry river in the form of souls, why couldn't he, a Yin divinity who had cultivated the great ghost spell, withstand the infiltration of the filthy power from the outer realms? A gust of extremely cold wind blew over. His Yin soul was on the verge of collapse. It was already difficult for him to withstand it. Other supernatural powers were even more terrifying, so his Yin soul naturally couldn't withstand them. However, he courted death by sending his Yin spirit to the outer space again and again. When he could no longer bear it, he would immediately pull his Yin spirit back to the dark paradise. This process was extremely effective for the soul-traversing realm. The rule of Hauran was that before a cultivator could condense a yang soul, they couldn't enter the outer realms. This also made it impossible for soul wander realm cultivators to wander the outer realms with their Yin souls like he did. The soul wander realm's name came from the fact that they could release their Yin soul and wander the world outside of their physical bodies. Most cultivators at this level would leave their Yin souls 1,000 or 10,000 miles away from their bodies at most. They would search for remote and strange places and use special methods to refine their Yin souls and comprehend the essence of the soul wander realm. His soul wander realm cultivator was already in the outer realms of Hauran, but he still recklessly rushed into the terrifying starry sky outside the Yin light shield with his Yin soul. Although the pain was unbearable, his Yin spirit was also weakened by the corrosion and became blurry. However, every time his Yin spirit recovered, he could clearly feel that his understanding of the soul-traversing realm, the tempering and advancement of this realm, was definitely far superior to those cultivators of the same realm in Hauran. Cultivators of the same level as him would never have the chance to step foot into outer space. Furthermore, they would not dare to expose their Yin spirit in outer space. As such, they would never have the same experience as him. He had an intuition that his soul-traversing realm cultivation method was definitely a shortcut for rapid advancement. If only his own spirit hadn't been destroyed because of his recklessness. Just like that, he released his own spirit from time to time and rushed out of the fluorescent energy barrier to court death a few times. On this day, his own divinity drifted outside once again and suddenly sensed an abnormal fluctuation. His own spirit returned to its original position, and he stood up on the high platform. Then, he used his blood essence and soul remembrance to examine the situation. Inside his blood aura world, the life altar was spinning abnormally high. His heart was also beating violently. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at Pattinson and ordered, "Head in that direction." The skinny man, who was immersed in the grief of his brother's death, raised his head, looked in the direction Cheen Lai was pointing, and nodded. He was using his bloodline to connect to the hidden array under the ground. This was already the Annihilation star system. According to the White Crane, the experts of the 5 Supreme Forces did not dare to set foot here. The direction Pattinson adjusted to deviate from the direction the White Crane pointed out. The Crane of Death, who had landed behind Dark Paradise and was fiddling with the strange golden trident after Kaf's death, felt that something was wrong and looked over in surprise. "There's something strange in that direction that's attracting me," Yu Yuan explained. "Do as you wish," the White Crane said indifferently. Dark Paradise then adjusted its direction and approached its target at an astonishing speed. 2 hours later, an enormous, strange nest suddenly appeared in the dark, cold, and desolate universe. The giant nest was like an incomparably large bird's nest. It was surrounded by rings of tough branches. Because it was still quite far away, those thin branches were actually as thick as a giant dragon. The enormous bird's nest contained an inverted mountain. The bottom of the mountain was sharp and the top was smooth and flat. The smooth mountain was firmly bound and protected at the center of the enormous bird's nest. A misty, cyan aura enveloped the flat mountain like an eggshell. With a closer look, Nye Tian could even see powerful outsider experts busily building a castle. From a great distance, Yu Yuan observed with rapt attention. He discovered that what was causing his heart to beat wildly and his life alter to react wasn't the inverted mountain or some outsider. It was that strange bird's nest. The thick, long branches that formed the bird's nest flowed with mysterious energy that contained the aura of flesh and blood. His flesh aura seemed to be immortal and indestructible, and seemed to be able to look down on all living beings. Even Yu Yuan's flesh aura was strongly affected by it. The White Crane went from the rear edge of the gloomy paradise to the front of the land in an instant. Its grayish-white eyes shone with a light that no one dared to look directly at. He laughed strangely, but didn't give any explanation. "I see winged race clansmen." Benin, who was floating in the air, slowly floated up and looked at the bird's nest from afar. The dark paradise they were on slowly came to a stop. Azura General Fernan and Elena walked out of the square stone pavilion together. Fernan stared into the distance and took a closer look. Then, he exclaimed, "The ruined fortress!" "The ruined fortress!" Hart exclaimed. The ruined fortress, which had been built by the 2 winged race bandit kings, was a flying tool that roamed the edge of the universe like Dark Paradise. The ruined fortress and the bandits inside were invited here by us. White Crane looked at the land that looked like an upside-down mountain with a fake smile. However, that giant bird's nest wasn't on the ruined fortress before. "This bird's nest sounds familiar. I think I've heard of it somewhere before." Fernan frowned in thought. "I'll go take a look." Yu Yuan, on the other hand, was more decisive. Summoning the evil demon cauldron, she jumped into it and rushed out of the gray paradise under the protection of the fluorescent energy shield, heading for the so-called Fortress of Destruction. A strange smile appeared at the corner of the White Crane's mouth, and a shocking light flowed out of its grayish-white eyes. "You recognize that bird's nest?" Lady Peach asked curiously. White Crane smiled and nodded. He didn't explain. "It's one of the 3 nests of the immortal birds. Fernand of the Azura race slapped his head and suddenly remembered. He looked at the dark universe nearby and nodded. It must be. It should be the nest built by the legendary immortal bird. The immortal bird. Lady Peach was shocked. 100,000 years ago, that crazy immortal bird was besieged by the strongest experts of various races in this star system. Fernand's expression was heavy. The immortal bird is the most ancient of the behemoths of the universe. It possesses the ultimate power of death, destruction, and regeneration. It is said that she will never die. There is a saying that she can come back to life in any of the 3 nests she built. The 3 nests she left behind contain all kinds of wondrous power. One of the nests disappeared after she died in the Annihilation star system. The other 2 nests seem to have been secretly placed in the depths of the universe. They haven't been discovered yet. Looking at the giant nest that enveloped the Destruction Fortress and sensing the mysterious power inside, Fernand felt slightly uneasy. When the legendary immortal bird appeared for the last time 100,000 years ago, the terrifying power of death inside her body spread out uncontrollably. Wherever she went, all the living beings in the star regions were taken away, dying one after another. In order to prevent her from going out of control and destroying more star systems, the rank 10 bloodline experts of the major races had rushed over to hunt her down. In the end, the legendary immortal bird died here. Because of her death, this star system was renamed the Annihilation star system. Whoosh! The moment the fiend demon cauldron passed through the cyan light and landed on the Destruction Fortress, several winged outsiders stared at it as if they were facing a great enemy. Humans. One of them, a winged race expert who was as thin as White Crane in human form, said in the human language, "We were invited here. Are you a guide of the Tongtian Trading Company or a human evil cultivator? Why have you come to us from the Dark Paradise?" The dozen or so winged race clansmen, the Crypt race, and the Rock people all grew nervous. This continent was many times larger than the Dark Paradise. The palaces that were being built were actually the structures of human cities that Yu Yuan was familiar with. There were also many familiar formations. He even saw the patterns of birds engraved on the walls of one of the stone towers. "I think I've seen it somewhere before." As soon as he thought this, a clear bird's cry came from under the Destruction Fortress. The expressions of all the winged race clansmen changed. The winged race clansman who spoke to Yu Yuan stilled, as if he was communicating with someone with a secret method. Soon, surprise appeared on his face and he said, "Someone wants to see you." The moment he heard the bird's cry, Yu Yuan had a guess in his heart. He nodded slightly and motioned for him to lead the way. Then, the winged race clansmen led him to a strange cylindrical building. They led him down a flight of stone steps that led to the underground. He followed calmly, not worried that the winged race clansmen of the Destruction Fortress would assassinate him. Soon, under the Destruction Fortress, he saw a Cyan Luan in the form of a spirit in a strange place where divine light interwove into a bird's nest. There were obvious wounds on the Cyan Luan's forehead. There was also a mysterious woman with a beautiful figure and a bright silver phoenix crown wearing a Cyan Luan robe. The crown she wore had a curtain of beads that covered her face, making it impossible to see her true appearance. "Greetings, Lord Medicine God. 300 years ago, you unintentionally saved Princess Qing Luan." Chapter 1053. The Immortal Bird, the Crane of Death. The Shura general on the Grey Paradise muttered to himself, and then his expression changed drastically. He looked at the White Crane, who was looking at the Destruction Fortress from the edge of the continent, with eyes full of fear. He took a deep breath, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. Pattinson was dazed for a moment, and then seemed to have guessed something. His expression changed drastically as well. Whoosh! Hukaiyun turned into a wisp of smoke and stopped next to the great demon that had taken human form. She looked at the destruction fortress curiously and asked, "Who's inside? Do you know that there's someone or something you're familiar with inside the fortress?" "Don't be so curious, Lady Peach." White Crane chuckled. "I know what you're thinking. I don't mind telling you that the reason why the Chamber of Commerce chose the Domain of Annihilation is because this place is special. Also, the realm where the immortal bird is gathered is the legendary place where the immortal bird fell." Hu Kaiyun pondered for a moment and said, "The power of death you've comprehended, could it be?" White Crane smiled but didn't say anything. In the underground of the Destruction Fortress, after the Azure Phoenix Empress expressed her thanks in a warm voice, she took off the phoenix crown on her head, revealing an extremely beautiful face that could turn all living things upside down. Her eyes were like the clearest gems in the world, releasing a pure and flawless luster. Her delicate skin was as smooth as white jade. No matter how picky people were, they couldn't find a single flaw in her facial features. She was so perfect that it made people feel like they were in a dream. Such a peerless beauty didn't seem to exist in reality. It should only exist in dreams and legends. She seemed to be in her early 20s, and she had a graceful and noble aura. She was even more beautiful than the Silver Moon Queen that Yu Yuan had seen not long ago. Even someone as determined as Yu Yuan felt a little dazed as he looked at Princess Qing Luan politely taking off the phoenix crown. "Senior?" Princess Qing Luan called out softly 3 times, but Yu Yuan still didn't come back to his senses. Helpless, he could only put on the crown that covered his peerless appearance again. At this time, Yu Yuan, who had been staring at her for a long time, seemed to come back to his senses. "You really surprised me. 300 years ago, you were unkempt and unkempt. You were just a dirty little girl. I was moved by compassion because I saw that Qing Luan was eager to protect its master and was not afraid of death." Yu Yuan rubbed the stiff flesh on her face and shook her head with a smile. He really couldn't connect the Princess Qing Luan he had just seen with that 7- or 8-year-old girl. He also couldn't imagine that the little girl could grow to such a height. Before this Princess Qing Luan left Qing Luan City, she was publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert of Qian continent. Of all the emperors in history, the one who had reached the top was a woman. She was the one with the highest cultivation level and combat power. In fact, she was also the object of lifelong worship of Li Yupan, who was also a female emperor. One was the female emperor of Qing Luan City, who was highly regarded by the 5 supreme powers. She had quietly cultivated to the Freedom Realm and reached the Tao Integration Realm. She was the little girl he had saved in the past. And now, he met her again in the outer realms of the Star River. "I didn't recognize Senior in Qing Luan City. I hope Senior won't blame me." Princess Qing Luan's voice was clear and sweet, without the terrifying majesty she had in Howran. "I only recently learned that you are the drug god from the winged race who destroyed the fortress. Congratulations, Senior, for reincarnating in a new way." Beside her, the extremely handsome Qing Luan spirit also cried out in celebration. Yu Yuan waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to be polite. He secretly sensed for a while and said, "What is this bird nest that surrounds the fortress?" What attracted me here was the special ability flowing in it. To tell you the truth, this bird nest is one of the 3 nests built by the immortal bird. Princess Qing Luan explained softly, "After I lost my Tao in Qing Luan City and fell back to the Yang spirit realm, I returned to the outer realms. I discovered this lair by chance and fused with it, ascending to the Freedom Realm once more. As for the winged race bandits in the fortress, this nest is the ancestral land of the winged race. They worship the immortal bird and believe that the immortal bird's bloodline flows in their bodies. The immortal bird is regarded by the foreign races in the outer realms of the Star River as the bird of evil, the bird of death, and the bird of destruction. When I reached the Tao Integration Realm in this nest, they believed that I had received the immortal bird's inheritance and swore loyalty to me. Hey Sun, who betrayed Devil's Palace, found me and invited me to the Annihilation Realm. This is the place where the immortal bird died. He soon told me that the other nest of the immortal bird was also here. Princess Qing Luan didn't hide anything. She spoke freely in front of Yu Yuan. From her, Yu Yuan learned that the immortal bird was a legendary star behemoth like the Chaos Kun. He knew how powerful the immortal bird was and the calamity it had caused. The bird of destruction, the bird of death, the white crane. A moment later, he suddenly realized something. Right, the white crane who betrayed the Goblin Temple is now in the Tongtian Trading Company. He has a nickname called the Crane of Death. What do you think? Princess Qing Luan nodded slightly under the beaded curtain. That white crane must have received part of the immortal bird's inheritance and comprehended the power of death. Did you meet someone you know? The white crane said to Yu Yuan, who had just returned from the Fortress of Destruction, with an evil smile on his face. Kind of. Yu Yuan returned to his seat on the high platform. His expression was calm, and he didn't explain anything. Princess Qing Luan said that the moment she accepted He Sun's invitation to enter the Annihilation Star Zone, she was no longer on the same side as the five supreme forces. In the future, she would probably not help either side and stay neutral. Since the Shunhun sect had sent her an invitation, and their destination was the same, Yu Yuan and she knew what to do after a simple conversation. They agreed to wait until they reached the realm created by the Tongtian Trading Company. There, Yu Yuan should be able to get answers to many of his questions. The Crane of Death. Looking at the white crane who wanted to talk, Yu Yuan's mouth twitched. He realized that this white crane of the Tongtian Trading Company and Princess Qing Luan had a conflict of Tao. The white crane and Princess Qing Luan had each comprehended one of the core powers of the undying bird. In the future, these two would be great enemies on their way to becoming nascent soul and demon immortals. After meeting Princess Qing Luan and sensing the strange power of one of the three nests of the undying bird, he had a feeling that, at this moment, the Crane of Death might not be a match for Princess Qing Luan, who was in the same nest as the Unifying Path. Princess Qing Luan had come to the Annihilation Star Zone in search of a second nest of the undying bird so that she could continue her unifying path and pursue greater power. 3 days later, when the Gray Paradise passed by an extremely cold place covered in silver, the white crane shouted softly, and the flying land slowly came to a stop. This strange place was not surrounded by the boundary wall. All that could be seen were glaciers, snowy plains, and snowy mountains. Whoosh whoosh. In the surrounding rivers of stars, the chaotic power of the many rivers of stars and the cold power seemed to be attracted to this place, and all rushed into it. Hukaiyun floated up to the edge of the Gray Paradise, and looked down at the extremely cold place below. She exclaimed softly and immediately looked at the white crane next to her, which was falling like a streak of white light. Yu Yuan, the first guest elder of the Tongtian Trading Company and the owner of the white crane, is in the extremely cold place below. Hukaiyun turned to Yu Yuan. You've seen him in the starry ash sea. His name is Junchen. Yu Yuan, who had been sitting quietly, opened his eyes and frowned. He didn't say anything. Both the life altar in his body and Consort Han in the fiendish demon cauldron sensed a familiar power at this moment. Lord Medicine God, come down and take a look. The white crane's voice rang out from the extremely cold land. My master asked me to invite you down. He has something to discuss with you. Don't worry, Hukaiyun said. With the dragon beheading platform in your hand, no one from the Tongtian Trading Company will dare to do anything to you. I'm not afraid. Yu Yuan shook his head. He wanted to say that there should be something in the extremely cold place. In the end, he didn't explain. Instead, he motioned to Pattinson. Stay in the Gray Paradise and wait for us to return. Pattinson nodded. Okay. Us. Elena pointed at herself and Fernan. You two stay up there. After saying this, Yu Yuan, accompanied by Hu Kaiyun, flew down from the gloomy paradise to the land below. Even before they arrived, they could feel chills running through their bodies, and their teeth were chattering. Chapter 1054. Snow mountains and glaciers could be seen everywhere on the extremely cold land covered in silver. White Crane stood behind Junchen, who was dressed in white. Junchen was holding a bamboo flute. When Yu Yuan and Hu Kaiyun arrived, he smiled and nodded to Yu Yuan. When he faced Lin Zhuyun before, his expression had been cold and indifferent. When it came to Hu Kaiyun, he only nodded slightly, without a trace of a smile on his face. His difference in treatment was so obvious. "This is my master." White Crane behind him squinted and introduced him to Yu Yuan. After Yu Yuan landed on the snow mountain where they were, he met Jun Chen's gaze and bowed slightly as a greeting. As the first guest of the Tongtian Trading Company and a high-level cultivator in the late stage of the Liberty Realm, this man riding a crane named Jun Chen had lived longer than he had in his previous life. He had only disappeared because President Li had left the world. In Yu Yuan's short life 300 years ago, he had only heard of this person called Jun Chen. Because Jun Chen hadn't appeared in the world in those 100 years, he hadn't seen him. This person was older than him, who had lived 2 lives. His status and cultivation were also so prominent that Yu Yuan had to bow to him. "It's like this," Jun Chen pointed to an iceberg in the distance, on the surface of the sea surrounded by cold fog. Yu Yuan glanced over and saw a familiar figure in the sparkling, translucent glacier. The woman's face was full of pain, as if she was suffering from the erosion of some terrible power. She was in a semi-conscious state. She was in a hurry to succeed. Without a solid foundation, she kept breaking through the realm. Also, the after-effects and backlash left behind when she refined the demon in her body caused her qi and blood to freeze. There was cold poison precipitating, causing her qi and blood to not flow smoothly. Jun Chen pointed out Lin Zhuyun's problem. Yu Yuan's face was indifferent. Looking at the figure in the glacier, he thought to himself, what a coincidence. When he had landed, he had sensed the unusual changes in his flesh aura and consort Han's movements. Therefore, he guessed that his fiancée was most likely down there. Who would have thought that he would really guess it? So many years had passed in the blink of an eye, and he'd never imagined that they would actually be reunited in such an extremely cold and small world in the world of annihilation. "Senior, did you call me down because of her?" Yu Yuan pursed his lips. "Perhaps you can solve her problem." Her flesh aura heaven and earth froze with the help of the altar inside of you that contains life power. "I also think that you have the ability to treat the cold poison in her body," Junchen said slowly, "especially when I learned from the White Crane that you even cracked the heavenly water net." Yu Yuan released his soul will, flesh aura, and wisps of spirit energy into the glacier. A moment later, he nodded. "I should have that ability." Like the frigid world he was in, Lin Zhuyun's flesh aura heaven and earth were frozen everywhere. Countless tiny cold crystals contained strange power that Lin Zhuyun couldn't refine, and couldn't expel from her body due to the freezing of her flesh aura heaven and earth. Also, he sensed that Lin Zhuyun's body was unusually fragile. When a cultivator broke through into the profound stage, he should have focused on tempering his body, meridians, and internal organs. Lin Zhuyun must have been forced to break through into the next stage. Lin Zhuyun's weakness lay in her flesh aura heaven and earth and her frail body. It didn't match her current soul wander stage cultivation at all, so it caused a lot of side effects. It was just that. Yu Yuan snorted, wondering what it had to do with him. "I know who you are. I won't force you. It's up to you whether you want to save her or not," Junchen said with a smile. "No," Yu Yuan answered. Junchen nodded and said, "I see. You go first. See you later." "Okay." Yu Yuan clasped his hands and turned into a bolt of lightning, shooting back to the dark paradise. Congratulations! Jun Chun congratulated Madame Peach Blossom indifferently. Hu Kaiyun smiled and didn't say a word. She followed Yu Yuan back to the dark paradise. What about me? The white crane pointed at himself. I'm going with them. Okay. A while later, when the dark paradise had already disappeared into the distance, the glacier that had frozen Lin Zhuyun exploded. Lin Zhuyun, whose beautiful face was full of anger, glared at Jun Chun. Why did you do this? You won't last long if you don't have any fortuitous encounters. Anyway, Yu Yuan is your fiancé and he happened to pass by. I asked him to come here out of kindness. Jun Chun frowned slightly. You happened to be in a coma because of the backlash, so I let him choose. He didn't kill me because of you. Lin Zhuyun sneered. Jun Chun shook his head and said inexplicably, What a pity. Lin Zhuyun walked out of the iceberg and stared at the vast sea of stars. After a moment of silence, she gritted her teeth and said, I won't wait anymore. I'll go out and try my luck. Either I die in the Annihilation Star Zone, or I become a butterfly in this wondrous place and build a young spirit body to regain my life. Splash! A series of ice crystals were pulled out of the iceberg and the sea by her power, quickly freezing into an extremely cold ice rock. She slipped into the ice rock, summoned her power, and suddenly soared into the sky. What a tough and stubborn girl. No wonder the primordial Kuan likes her, Jun Chun murmured softly. How ruthless. Hu Kaiyun fell into the dark paradise and glanced at Yu Yuan, who was cultivating as if nothing had happened. She shook her head and sighed. She's such a beautiful woman, and her cultivation is so extraordinary. Why didn't you save her? Yu Yuan turned a deaf ear. That girl is called Lin Zhuyun. She's the fiancée of the drug god in this life, the white crane said sarcastically. Fiancé? Is there such a relationship? Hu Kaiyun was interested. After I left the starry ash sea, I didn't pay much attention to the news there. Tell me, what's the situation between the two of them? The white crane chuckled. I only learned about it recently when I heard that the girl came to the Annihilation Star Zone. The white crane was very gossipy and began to talk about the grudges between Yu Yuan and Lin Zhuyun. Benin, Elena, and Pattinson's ears twitched slightly as they listened with great interest. Yu Yuan, however, kept a long face the whole time. A few more days passed. Gradually, the dark paradise encountered some other unique ancient starships. There were stone men, dark spirits, female demons, and heavenly devils from the other domains. They flew past in groups, giving rise to loud whistles. At this moment, everyone knew that they were about to arrive at their destination. Both the battleships and the outsiders followed the rules set down by the Heavenspan Trading Company. None of them dared to start a fight. Even if they had old grudges and glared at each other when they encountered each other, that was all. After all, the rules were that they could settle their personal grudges outside the domain of annihilation, but not inside. When a goose-egg-shaped heaven and earth appeared in front of the dark paradise, Yu Yuan's heart stirred, and he suddenly woke up from his meditation. A chubby figure floated down from the sky and landed in front of him, his face filled with eagerness. You boy, you didn't expect this? We'll see each other in the starry river. Zhou Yu of the Skyspan Trading Company grinned from ear to ear. Chapter 1055. In the Thousand Birds realm, which was in the shape of a goose egg, ancient starships were scattered and berthed in the starry river outside the starry sky. One of them was a battleship of the star race that belonged to the Coleman family. Asa, Wilson, and the other experts of the star race had arrived here first. Becker, the emissary of the Curtis clan, finally met up with them. At this moment, he was anxiously waiting for the person the Tongtian Trading Company had arranged to receive them. The Dark Paradise! When the familiar floating continent appeared in their sight, Wilson couldn't help but exclaim, "Let's go." Becker, who was standing in a corner of the starship, opened his eyes upon hearing that the dark paradise had arrived. He started to pay close attention to the floating continent, saying, "Remember, don't ever offend that young man named Yu Yuan. I told you in detail on our way here that he has an extraordinary identity." "We won't," Asa said hastily. "We know what we're doing." At this moment, he realized that Yu Yuan had deep connections with the Howran Shinhan sect. Whoosh! All of a sudden, they saw a streak of bright light that tore through the void flash across the Thousand Birds realm. "That's President Li's favorite man. His name is Zhou Yu." Becker's expression flickered as he explained to Asa and Wilson, "This Zhou Yu has been imprisoned in Sword Prison for many years. You might not know him, but I'm sure you know the cultivation bases of the human experts who are qualified to be imprisoned in Sword Prison." Sword Prison? Asa was filled with deep veneration. Becker from the Curtis clan had a special, astrolabe-shaped badge under his robe, which made him instantly excited. "Big brother!" Whoosh! A brilliant stream of stars actually flew out from the Thousand Birds realm. After circling around, it also quickly headed towards the dark paradise, attracting the attention of many people. "That's Beirut, the 9-star sage of the Curtis clan. Wasn't he trapped in Howran's heaven and earth? Why isn't there any news of his return?" The outsider experts on the other starships were also alarmed and started a heated discussion. "You guys stay here, I'll go take a look." Beck was extremely excited. He casually gave Asa an order, and no matter what he was thinking, he once again licked his lips and walked towards the floating gloomy paradise. On the floating continent, Zhou Yu held a horsetail whisk in his hand and smiled brightly. "You brat, you're really lucky. I knew that with 2 pieces of the dragon beheading platform, nothing big would happen to you." Seeing him appear, Yu Yuan calmed down. "When did you come out?" "I've been out for a while. It's just that I haven't been in the Thousand Birds realm for long." Zhou Yu, White Crane, and Hu Kaiyun nodded slightly, but they ignored Fernan and Elena. "Speaking of which, we haven't seen each other for almost a year. If I hadn't heard that you had appeared in the dark paradise, I would have thought that I wouldn't have been able to see you at this Thousand Birds World's gathering." Yu Yuan asked concernedly, "Is it the forbidden land of the fallen moons after I left?" He wanted to know the whereabouts of Luo Yu, Shi Quan, and many others who were close to him. "Don't worry," Zhou Yu said with a chuckle. "Everyone who survived before you entered the realm passage is still alive. You'll find many familiar faces in the Thousand Birds realm this time. The great changes in Howran have been temporarily stabilized after a discussion between the 2 sides. Our future battles will take place in outer space." While the 2 of them were talking, 9-star sage Beirut of the Starlings flew over with an anxious expression. As soon as he appeared, Fernan, who recognized him, bowed slightly to him and said, "Greetings, old sage Beirut." Beirut of the Curtis clan of the Starlings. Pattinson, Benin, Hart, and other outsider warriors were filled with deep veneration. Beirut had been famous in the Starry River for a long time. He was knowledgeable, kind, and well-mannered. Even Fernan, who had become a bandit, admired him. Beirut waved his hand and didn't want to talk to them. The moment he entered, he looked at Yu Yuan with a pitiful expression and said, "I thought I wouldn't be able to see you again." The 2 of them had been familiar with each other since their time in the Fiend Demon sect. After fighting side by side in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, they were no strangers to each other. Yu Yuan only glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. She smiled and asked, "Have you prepared the materials for alchemy?" Beirut nodded repeatedly. "They're ready." The moment he appeared, Yu Yuan had sensed that his condition wasn't very good. If he didn't change his fate with some wondrous medicinal pills, his lifespan would soon run out. "Give them to me." Yu Yuan stretched out one of her hands, while a miniature flowing flame pill cauldron suddenly appeared in front of her with her other hand. "Here?" Beirut was both surprised and overjoyed. Yu Yuan said with a smile, "Right here." "Good." Beirut's eyes shone with the light of anticipation. He carefully took off a beast skin pouch from his waist and handed it to Yu Yuan with both hands, saying, "They're all here. All the spiritual materials you asked for are here, and I've even prepared 3 extra portions of each." Yu Yuan took the pouch, scanned it with his soul awareness, and nodded. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that the attention of many outsiders and heavenly devils on the battleships around Thousand Bird Realm was converging on him. It was as if they were paying close attention to everything that was happening here. He laughed softly, grabbed the beast's skin pouch, and disappeared into a tower-shaped stone pavilion in the blink of an eye. Splash! At this moment, Becker, who was also from the Curtis clan, passed through the light shield and landed. His eyes were red as he said, "Big brother." Beirut turned around and glared at him, scolding, "I'm not dead yet. You look like I'm going to die at any moment." "Big brother, it's good to see you." Becker laughed dryly. "When you weren't here, we seemed to have lost our sense of direction. We didn't know where to go." "How dare you? The Patriarch is in his prime. He has a top-rank 10 bloodline and is one of the strongest experts in the endless universe. He's in charge of the clan. What's there to worry about?" Beirut scolded. Becker chuckled and didn't dare to talk back. He only said, "Yu Yuan, is he really a medicine god?" "Yes, he should be able to solve the problems that have plagued me for many years with pills," Beirut said expectantly. "I'll stay and wait." "Where's Yu Yuan?" Yu Yuan has appeared. Streaks of light suddenly flew out of Thousand Bird Realm, causing the foreign experts who had come from afar to be at a loss. They didn't know why such a huge commotion had occurred after the arrival of the Dark Paradise. "Holy Daughter!" All the members of the Bright Light clan were screaming hoarsely on a shining battleship. One expert after another, who was at least at the 8th grade and was clad in expensive armor, suddenly rose to their feet. Upon seeing Canley, they were so excited that they seemed ready to die for her at any moment. Canley, who was born with a life altar, was the future patriarch of the Light Race. She was the key for the Light Race to wash away their humiliation and fight against the Devil Master of the Devil's Palace. When Canley had gone to Howran, many people in the clan had stopped her. When they heard that something had happened in Howran, all the Light Race clansmen were worried that something had happened to her. Now that they finally saw this peerless treasure in Thousand Bird Realm again, they were naturally excited. The Holy Daughter has gone to the bandits' Dark Paradise. In the next moment, the warriors of the Light Race left the warship to welcome their young master. Chapter 1056. Yu Yuan, Mia of the Dark Spirit Race, Sansum of the Demoness Race, Chi Yunhong who was wrapped in lightning, and Old Copper Coin, who was as smooth as white jade, rushed out of Thousand Bird Realm one after another after Beirut and Canley. On the ancient starships anchored outside the Thousand Birds Realm, the jaws of many outsider experts almost dropped to the ground. Because the meeting hadn't started yet, the invited overlords hadn't all arrived. After considering all aspects, the Tongtian Trading Company asked those who arrived first to stay outside for a while. The Thousand Bird Realm didn't open to the overlords immediately. Because of that, the aliens who arrived first could only wait patiently outside. Only a few extremely noble people who had a deep relationship with the Tongtian Trading Company were brought in early. The reason why Asa and the others knew Zhou Yu was because Zhou Yu was the guide. They had seen Zhou Yu personally appear and solemnly bring Elder Fei Shui of the Void Spirit Charm back to Thousand Bird Realm. From this, they knew that Zhou Yu's identity was very special. President Li's trusted aide. However, after Zhou Yu appeared in the Dark Paradise, he treated Yu Yuan so warmly, which surprised everyone. They had heard of Yu Yuan's name because the demon god of the blood demon race had secretly told everyone to help pay attention to a human named Yu Yuan and was willing to pay a lot of money for information about him. After asking around, they found out that Yu Yuan was a cultivation genius in Haoran and seemed to be related to the Shunhun sect. Very few people knew that Yu Yuan was the reincarnation of the drug god because they couldn't set foot in Haoran, and Yu Yuan had risen quickly in Haoran, so it was difficult to know everything. Then, Beirut, the 9-star sage of the star race, Canli, the next patriarch of the bright light race, Mia, the priestess of the dark spirit race, Sansum, the spiritual leader of the female demon race. The scene of these great figures, who were like thunder in the ears, rushing out of the 1,000 birds realm one after another and landing in the dark paradise, was truly too eye-catching. What many of the foreign races could not accept was that their leader was clearly in the 1,000 birds realm, yet he had not seen them before. Also, after coming out of the 1,000 birds realm, he didn't meet them first. Instead, he went straight to the dark paradise. What kind of magical power did the gloomy paradise, where the bandits gathered? They observed carefully. Immediately after, he discovered that the experts of the various races, as well as the new sun god of the human clan, upon arriving at the dark paradise, were all asking where Yu Yuan was on the battleship of the Star Clan. Wilson looked at the destroyed Star Vault divine cannon that couldn't be repaired. He sighed, shook his head and said, "We can't take revenge. You'd better give up on that idea." Ace's face was stern. "Don't bring disaster to the Coleman clan. We can't afford to offend Yu Yuan or Fei Shui." Wilson nodded slightly. "Where's Yu Yuan?" "Alchemy." Resplendent Canli turned into a beam of divine light and asked, "What's the matter?" Zhou Yu answered with a smile. Immediately after, Mia, Sansum, Qi Yunhong, Old Tong, and Qian Yunhong, who had forged a sun god body, also asked where Yu Yuan was when they landed. Pattinson, Benin, Hart, Fernan, and Elena were dumbstruck. They didn't expect that after Beirut, other important figures of the various races, such as Canli, Mia, and Sansum, would rush out of the 1,000 birds realm because of Yu Yuan's appearance, and all of them showed a strong interest in Yu Yuan. Outsiders such as Pattinson were unfamiliar with Zhou Yu and even the White Crane. But Canli, Beirut, Mia, and Sansum, who were incomparably dazzling figures in the entire universe, all had noble identities. They were almost one of the few people in their races who were second only to the patriarch. No matter where they went, they would be treated as distinguished guests. And these people didn't come for the White Crane or anyone else, but for Yu Yuan. At this moment, the Shura general, who had become a bandit, looked meaningfully at his daughter next to him, rubbing his chin. No one knew what he was thinking. They didn't have to wait for long. In less than an hour, Yu Yuan walked out of the pagoda-shaped stone pavilion with a smile. A miraculous pill in the shape of a leaf, sparkling and translucent like green jade, was placed in a white jade bottle. He handed it to Beirut and said, "Swallow it and guide the pill's medicinal power to your heart." Sensing the arrival of Canli, Mia, and the others, he looked indifferent. "Master, Yu Yuan." As Qi Yunhong and Qian Yunhong called out in surprise, he nodded slightly. At this moment, everyone's eyes and attention were fixed on the pill that looked like a green leaf. Mia, the dark spirit, took a deep breath through the white jade bottle and sensed incomparably rich life aura from it. She knew that this pill carried the power to change heaven and earth. Mia's expression flickered as she suspected that Yu Yuan must have bestowed this pill with his own special power. Holding the pill with both hands, Beirut took a deep breath and said, "I can't thank you enough." With these words, he gave Becker a meaningful glance, and then flew towards the Coleman clan's ancient starship. Becker followed after him. After nodding at Yu Yuan, Mia shot a cold glance at Hu Kaiyun. "Your Lady Peach, Hu Kaiyun. I know what you did in the spirit miasma realm. Once we leave the domain of annihilation and enter the starry river outside, the dark spirit will hunt you down. Hu Kaiyun didn't seem to care at all. She just smiled. You? At this moment, Yu Yuan noticed that Qi Yunhong and Qian Yunhong had appeared in their Yang soul forms. Surprised, he said, "Not bad. I've already refined my Yang soul. It's only because I was set up that my cultivation base dropped." Qi Yunhong grinned and laughed wildly. "After you left, I went to the grand desolate God Lake, and it wasn't long before I reforged my Yang soul." Yu Yuan nodded slightly. After the death of Chu Jing from the Spirit Void sect, Qi Yunhong had obtained his treasures. Of course, he had the ability to exchange them for materials to reforge his Yang soul. The second time would be easier than the first time. As for Qian Yunhong, he should have made a breakthrough without leaving anything behind. After that, he asked a few more questions. Then, he learned that there were 2 ways to leave the realm barrier and rush out of the Starry River in Howran. One was in the hands of the 5 supreme forces. The other was in the hands of the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company, President Li. After they broke through to the Yang Soul stage, they entered the starry sky from another star path. Then, through the arrangements of Zhou Yu, they were able to smoothly arrive at the Thousand-Bird Realm through several hidden ferries in outer space. However, they hadn't been in the Thousand-Bird Realm for long. The reason why the Tongtian Trading Company didn't allow the starships and foreign warriors of the various races to enter the Thousand-Bird Realm in advance was that they were still making arrangements. It wasn't easy to create a Star River ferry similar to the Realm Passage in the Fallen Moon Forbidden Area. There were many secrets inside that the Tongtian Trading Company didn't want other races to know. The people they received were only void spirits like Fei Shui, who were also proficient in spatial secret technique. The rest were all concealed. "Other than you, are there any other acquaintances of Howran?" Yu Yuan asked. "Haha, there are more. Some are cultivating, and some are on the way. You'll know when you get in." Zhou Yu laughed heartily as he narrowed his eyes and looked at the others on this continent. Yu Yuan, except for Benin, who was chosen by her master, the others have to stay outside for now. He looked at Pattinson, Hart, Elena, and Fernan. "My master knows that I'm here?" Benin's eyes lit up. Zhou Yu nodded with a smile. "Fei Shui thinks highly of you. She's happy and proud of your breakthrough." Benin let out a sigh of relief. Even the corners of her eyes were filled with joy. "What about me?" Lady Peach pointed at her nose and asked Zhou Yu with a smile. Zhou Yu shook his head and explained with an apologetic smile, "The Tongtian Trading Company or the Shunhun sect. Only those who become members of either of these 2 sects are qualified to enter in advance." "What about them?" Hu Kaiyun looked at Canli, Mia, and the other outsiders. "Why do they deserve to enter? They fought side by side with us in the forbidden land of Fallen Moon and went through life and death situations together. It's different." Zhou Yu's expression was full of respect as he said these words. "Many people died in that battle. Many of them died." Yu Yuan naturally thought of Quake of the Silver Scale Race and the Heavenly Demons, who had been killed by the Silver Scale Race. After that bitter battle, the foreign races who survived had received the acknowledgement of the Divine Soul Sect and the Skyspan Trading Company. Moreover, they'd come from the Star Passage, which meant that they'd come from the Starry Sky Ferry, so the Skyspan Trading Company didn't try to avoid them. However, those who hadn't entered Howran before were still not allowed to enter in advance. "If that's the case, then I'll also choose the Shunhun sect," Hu Kaiyun said. Zhou Yu went blank for a moment before frowning and saying, "I didn't get any news from them." "Yu Yuan is the one who recommended me," Hu Kaiyun said with a smile as she stared at Yu Yuan and forced Yu Yuan to nod. Zhou Yu looked at Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan nodded helplessly and said, "I promised her." "Since it's you." Zhou Yu's expression grew serious. "Then it's fine." His attitude surprised both White Crane and Hu Kaiyun. "Seriously? Traveling around the world, I just said it casually. Did this brat have such a big face? Does he think that he can represent the Shenhun sect? Hu Kaiyun exclaimed. Yeah, as long as he agrees, Zhou Yu answered. Yu Yuan was also speechless. Other than Yan Qiling, he hadn't actually removed anyone from the Shenhun sect. The person in the giant bronze coffin had only said some ambiguous words to him, and was still in the coffin. But Zhou Yu, just because Hu Kaiyun said that she agreed, firmly believed that Hu Kaiyun would definitely get the permission of the Shenhun sect and become a member of the Shenhun sect. This surprised Yu Yuan. That's it. Let's enter the thousand-bird realm first. Zhou Yu flicked his horsetail whisk and rushed out of the fluorescent energy light shield to lead the way. The others who had just come out either followed him or looked at Yu Yuan and motioned for Yu Yuan to go first. For example, Qi Yunhong and Old Tong naturally stayed behind and waited for him to leave. See you later, Benin said softly to Hart. Hart grunted, indicating that he understood and had no problem with it. I'll bring one more person. It's her. Yu Yuan suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the dazed Elena. Is that okay? He asked Zhou Yu. Zhou Yu hesitated for a moment and said, Wait a moment, let me ask. Yu Yuan nodded. After a moment, Zhou Yu seemed to have received a response and said, Okay. Chapter 1057. Fernan watched his beloved daughter fly to thousand-bird realm with Yu Yuan with a complicated expression. The ancient starships docked nearby were full of experts from various places, including ferocious heavenly devils and evil human cultivators. Even people of that level weren't qualified to enter thousand-bird realm in advance. And his daughter, because of Yu Yuan's words, was given special treatment and had the qualifications to enter the thousand-bird realm. Fernan suddenly felt a little proud. Pattinson, tell me honestly, is there anything between Elena and that kid? After he found that Yu Yuan and the others had disappeared through the realm wall, he suddenly asked Pattinson with a serious expression. Pattinson pointed at the rank 8 Azura warrior. You'd better ask him. Fernan immediately looked at his subordinate. It should really be related. The surviving Azura warrior answered carefully and then hurriedly said, General, the situation was very bad. I couldn't intervene. He knew that Fernan hated the human race and would never allow his daughter to have any relationship with human cultivators. He was afraid that Fernan would vent his anger on him, so he tried his best to explain. However, he soon found that Fernan didn't seem to be angry. He just nodded. In the inner world of Thousand-Bird Realm, lush mountain ranges could be seen all over the continent. With a single glance, Yu Yuan discovered that the vegetation was dense and the trees were tall, brimming with vitality. He took a breath and was surprised to find that the spirit qi in this world was actually not bad. The spirit qi of heaven and earth here was mixed and impure. Compared to the Qian continent in Hauran, it might be inferior. However, the mixed energy of Thousand-Bird Realm didn't contain any filthy power that was harmful to the human body. This meant that human cultivators who had reached the breaking profound realm might be able to adapt. Of course, without the help of pills, special spirit herbs, and flesh, the efficiency of absorbing spirit qi in this world was far lower than in Hauran. Anywhere in Hauran was better than this place. In the middle of the many mountain ranges, a huge piece of flat land had been opened up, and many towering buildings were built. Yu Yuan was high up in the sky. With just a glance, he knew that the layout of the buildings was exactly the same as the Tongtian Trading Company's headquarters in Hauran. There were different halls for selling artifacts, medicinal pills and scrolls, and spirit materials and spell diagrams. Many human cultivators dressed in the clothes of the Tongtian Trading Company in the early years, as well as other races, were busily moving about in the halls, arranging a dazzling array of items. Yu Yuan, tell her to wait over there for a while. I want to take you somewhere else. Zhou Yu said softly. The place he pointed to was the VIP area where important figures were received. Yu Yuan glanced over and saw many luxuriously dressed experts of various races standing there. Miss Bei Ning, you should also wait over there, Zhou Yu said. Oh. Yu Yuan looked at Elena. Elena nodded. Got it. Without needing anyone to say anything, she flew towards the place Zhou Yu pointed to. Old Tong, Qian Yunhong, Qi Yunhong, and Mia of the dark spirit race all went over. Everyone else go over there first. After saying this, Zhou Yu pulled Yu Yuan's sleeve and disappeared in a flash. Also in Thousand Bird Realm, in a mysterious area between the mountains, there was a huge pit in the ground that was filled with another giant bird's nest. The bird's nest was also made of intertwined branches that were intertwined with each other. The strange energy flowing in the branches made Yu Yuan's life alter react strongly. The nest of the immortal bird. Yu Yuan exclaimed softly. Eh? You know the origin of this nest too? President Li smiled and waved at Yu Yuan beside the nest. He introduced him to the old female void spirit beside him. This is Yu Yuan. He, the one who has the heaven-splitting divine stone you speak of. Fei Shui, a 9th grade void spirit elder, nodded with a reserved smile. Hanch, you're still alive. Shi Quan of the withered sword placed the sword case on her legs and sat cross-legged on a branch that was as thick as a giant vine. Her entire body emitted a deathly aura that seemed to resonate with the nest of the undying bird. Other than her, there was Lu Lu, the Grand Commander of the Goblin Temple, and Zhongli de Pan of the ancient Desolate sect. Upon seeing Yu Yuan's appearance, all of them nodded slightly. A crane's cry rang out. The crane of death passed through the outer protective barrier and landed on the immortal bird's nest. He glanced sideways at Shi Quan and snorted coldly. What? You're the only one allowed to comprehend the immortal bird's death power? Shi Quan was not afraid in the slightest. She placed a finger on the sword sheath, and an extremely dense withering sword intent seemed to be about to burst out from the sword sheath. White Crane, do you want to experience the power of this sword of mine? All right, we're all on the same side, President Li scolded softly. Don't fight among yourselves. White Crane, who was about to say something provocative, shut up bitterly because of President Li's words. Shi Quan sneered proudly. What's going on? Yu Yuan asked. Zhou Yu looked around. Seeing that President Li didn't say anything, he had to answer himself. Since you know that this is one of the immortal bird's nests, I won't say much about it. 100,000 years ago, the immortal bird was besieged and killed by the chiefs of various races. The hole you see is the place where the undying bird fell. Her nest also collapsed because of it. Of course, to this day, there's still a saying that she'll never die, and will be reborn in one of her nests. Under the operation of our Chamber of Commerce, almost all of the collapsed nests and broken branches have been collected. In the crater where she fell, we rebuilt her nest back to its original state. This place has temporarily become a passageway similar to the one under the forbidden land of the fallen moons. We call it a ferry in the Starry River. Experts from other regions will be able to reach this place through this ferry. It's just that it's not stable yet, and there's a chance that the death power in it will erupt. You have to know that once the immortal bird's death power erupts, not just the Thousand Birds realm, but even the entire domain of annihilation will be affected. Zhou Yu said slowly. He told Yu Yuan that the reason why they hadn't allowed experts from other realms to enter was that the immortal bird's nest was very sensitive and unstable, and that it was for their safety. For the past 10,000 years, the domain of annihilation had been a forbidden zone for living beings. No foreign races had settled here. Even though there were many realms that could be slightly opened, powerful races could live in them. The reason why the Tongtian Trading Company had chosen the domain of annihilation to rebuild the immortal bird's nest in the Thousand Birds realm was to use it as a ferry in the Starry River to receive experts from other realms. It's said that the 3 nests of the immortal bird have a miraculous teleportation effect. Any living being in one of the nests can go to another. President Lee finally said slowly, "The nest we built later isn't perfect yet. It has many flaws, so it can only be used as a ferry in the Starry River. We invited the Blue Phoenix Empress to refine another immortal bird's nest. We invited her here because we want her to see what's wrong with this nest and see if she can solve it." President Lee explained. "Of the 3 nests, one is here, and the other has been refined by Princess Qing Luan. The last one is still missing. Yan Qiling is in charge of gathering information about the 3rd nest in the Shenhun sect. We need to confirm whether the immortal bird is truly dead, and whether it will come back to life in the 3rd nest." With these words, President Lee paused. Zhou Yu's eyes lit up as he exclaimed, "Princess Qingluan is here. If this nest can be completely repaired, then Princess Qingluan's nest will be sent to Howren's heaven and earth." President Lee's eyes shone with the light of astonishment. According to the star behemoth's profound abilities, not even the realm barrier of Howren's heaven and earth can stop the 2 nests from connecting. Yu Yuan's expression flickered as he heard this. There are many problems with the inter-realm tunnel in the Fallen Moon Forbidden Land that connects to the demonic abyss of calamity. Also, the demonic abyss of calamity has been firmly occupied by the blood demons, and has been destroyed from the inside out. Zhou Yu's expression was regretful. "We want to build a stable tunnel to Howren that won't be restricted by anyone." Whoosh! At this moment, the other immortal bird's nest, which was wrapped in Fortress of Destruction, penetrated the realm barrier of the 1,000 Birds realm and entered the inner world. The first thing White Crane and Shi Quan, the Withered Sword, did was to look at the nest that seemed to have the least problems so far. Of the 3 nests, one had been damaged and rebuilt, and the other was missing. Princess Qingluan's nest had no problems at all. The aura of the immortal bird inside it flowed freely and exuded all kinds of profound power. As White Crane and Shi Quan looked at the nest with shining eyes, the cry of an Azure Luan rang out from Fortress of Destruction. Chapter 1058. The Destroyer Fortress was surrounded by another undying bird's nest. As soon as it entered the 1,000-bird realm, it attracted everyone's attention. After the Blue Luan let out a crisp and pleasant cry, the nest slowly flew away from the Destroyer Fortress. After a flash, it suddenly appeared where Yu Yuan and the others were. White Crane, who had joined the Tongtian Trading Company, and Shi Quan immediately stared at the nest in front of them. These 2, and Princess Qing Luan of the Dao Integration Stage Nest, seemed to be destined to have a great battle for the inheritance of the undying bird. The power of death that the White Crane comprehended was closely related to the undying bird. The withering sword that Shi Quan cultivated also contained the power of death. On the other hand, it was the Blue Phoenix Empress who had yet to be discovered what kind of mysterious power she possessed. However, she had found the undying bird's nest. Moreover, after she succeeded in the Dao integration stage, she returned to the realm of freedom. Whoosh! The Azure Phoenix Empress, who wore a phoenix crown on her head, revealed her beautiful figure in the undying bird's nest that was floating in the air. However, her exceptional appearance was still covered by the drooping bead curtain, making it impossible for others to see her beautiful face. Many surprised gazes were fixed on her in an extremely natural manner. This first empress of the Qianxian continent had too many dazzling halos. She was the first female empress to reach the realm of freedom. She was once a sharp blade in the eyes of the 5 supreme forces. She had many achievements in the outer realms and was highly valued. Her arrival made Great Demon Lulu, Zhongli de Pan, Zhou Yu, President Li, and even Fei Shui, who was a void spirit, start to use their own soul and blood to sense her realm and strength. The more they sensed, the more they felt that Princess Qing Luan in front of them was like a deep and mysterious well. It exuded a sense of strangeness, power, and profoundness. A strange light flashed in the eyes of Lulu, who had a pair of slender vertical eyes. He couldn't help but look at the white crane and Shiquan, who cultivated the withering sword. For some reason, he had a strange thought that the true power of the Azure Phoenix Empress might be able to surpass those two. Lulu shook her head. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She couldn't believe it. Impressive. Zhonglide grinned and chuckled. He nodded at Princess Qingluan in a friendly manner. As for this Empress, who had been on good terms with the 5 supreme forces in the early years, after appearing from the bird's nest, she simply nodded at Yu Yuan and said in a dignified voice, "Senior Hong, we meet again." She didn't show much respect to anyone else, including President Li. "Are you sure you can repair this broken undying bird's nest?" President Li did not hide anything and went straight to the point. He said, "Together with the Shunhun sect, we invited you to the Thousand Birds world because we hope to borrow your strength to restore this nest to its original appearance." "Hong!" Princess Qingluan exclaimed softly. Yu Yuan smiled and said, "In the future, just call me by my name in this life. Although I've reincarnated, I'm more used to my identity in this life." "Okay." Princess Qingluan nodded slightly and deliberated for a moment before saying, "President Li, please let the unrelated people leave for the time being. Other than you and me, only Yu Yuan can stay here." President Li frowned slightly. The rest of the people looked rather displeased because of her words. Especially White Crane and Shiquan, they were even more furious and wanted to flare up. "I was originally in Qingluan City, but because of Chun Liangchuan's secret tricks, there was a flaw in my Dao heart. After that, Zuan and Senior Lu joined forces with the heavenly demons of the Outer Realm, plus Chun Liangquan and other hybrid races, forcing me to give up and fall from the carefree realm back to the Yang God." At this point, she paused for a moment. Everyone couldn't help but fall silent. "It was the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company that caused me to lose my emperor's throne and realm. You all know this. I returned to the outer realm of stars and accidentally discovered this undying bird's nest. I narrowly escaped death and successfully returned to the carefree realm. Then, you extended an invitation to me." She sneered. Everyone could hear the sarcasm in her words, as well as the anger hidden within. President Li was also a little embarrassed. He said embarrassedly, "The Tongtian Trading Company didn't do much for the plan of Qingluan City. It was all the arrangements made by the Shunhun sect." "Let the others leave first," Princess Qingluan repeated. President Li pondered for a few seconds and nodded. He smiled apologetically at Zhongli de Pan, Lulu, White Crane, Shiquan, and Fei Shui. "Let's talk about it later." Except for Yu Yuan, everyone he saw disappeared without a word. In an instant, only President Li and Yu Yuan were left. "I can repair this undying bird's nest and let it enter Hauran." The Blue Phoenix Empress immediately negotiated. "But you have to know one thing. After I repair the undying bird's nest, it will merge with me again and become my personal possession. And my strength will be further improved after I get 2 undying bird's nests. I'm still confident that I can deduce whether the 3rd undying bird nest has been destroyed or still exists after I fuse 2 undying bird nests with my Dao. I can also sense whether the undying bird is still there," Princess Qingluan said. President Li was instantly tempted. "Are you sure you can find the 3rd nest? It's very possible. However, if the 3rd undying bird's nest is really found, it will still belong to me," Princess Qingluan said with an unquestionable attitude. "I know that the Shunhun sect is also searching for the whereabouts of the 3rd nest. I hope that you can communicate with them about this. If all the nests belong to you, then, what can you do for us?" President Li asked. "I promise that one of the nests will belong to Hauran for you to come and go." Princess Qingluan thought for a while and said, I promise that I won't get involved in the battle between you and the 5 supreme forces. At least, when the real bloody battle starts, I will stay neutral and not help either side. One of your nests is for us to use in Howran. Do you think they will let you go? President Li laughed. That's their business, Princess Qingluan said indifferently. Wait a moment. Right in front of her and Yuan, President Li suddenly closed his eyes. Countless wisps of his soul awareness seemed to quietly spread out before converging and condensing in his mind. Okay. President Li opened his eyes and nodded slightly. I need his help. The Blue Phoenix Empress turned her head to look at Yu Yuan. Her eyes seemed to be fixed on Yu Yuan's chest. The life altar in his body has the miraculous power to refine the essence of flesh and blood, and then radiate the power of life. I used the undying bird's regenerative power to repair this nest. As for the power of regeneration, it was activated by the strange life force from his altar. Only then could the nest be restored. After saying this, she bowed slightly to Yu Yuan and sincerely requested, "Can I trouble you to help me?" Yu Yuan was stunned. He didn't expect that the second undying bird's nest in the deep pit in front of him would need his power to be completely repaired and successfully operated. It's good that you can come to the 1,000-bird realm. President Li smiled brightly. Everyone is on the same side. The boundless blood energy you condense with the life altar is also beneficial to you. The transformation requires the flesh of many high-level experts or ferocious beasts. This will also need you to provide. Princess Qingluan continued to make requests. President Li nodded. Of course. Good. Please get the flesh as soon as possible so that I can start as soon as possible. When the Blue Phoenix Empress spoke again, she had already shifted the bird's nest where she was at the Tao integration stage and landed in the deep pit below. Yuan, please come down and enter my Tao integration stage nest. Oh, Yu Yuan replied before descending to the ground. As soon as he entered, he felt that the 2 undying birds' nests didn't seem to be dead, but closer to some strange living creatures. P.S. I drank too much on New Year's Eve yesterday and was paralyzed for the whole morning. Sorry. Chapter 1059. In a corner of 1,000 Birds' realm, Shi Quan, who cultivated the withering sword, and the white crane, who had been chased by the goblin temple for many years, looked at each other with disgust. Thousands of tiny sword energies and demonic energy flowed in their eyes. In the valley they were in, the plants and trees withered, and the insects hidden deep underground died silently. Great demonic Lulu snorted softly. Streams of water quietly surrounded the valley to prevent the death and desolation intent these 2 spread out, causing other areas of 1,000 Birds' realm to be affected. What are you 2 doing? Lulu glanced at the white crane. The disdain and ridicule on his face were not concealed at all. There is one thing that I need to remind the 2 of you. The immortal bird from 100,000 years ago had 3 core powers: destruction, death, and rebirth. If you comprehend any of these 3 powers to the extreme, it can help you become a demonic god or primordial spirit, but… Lulu paused. The white crane and Shi Quan showed expressions of listening. They did not compete in secret anymore. Clearly, they still valued Lulu. Lulu and the white crane were both great demonic gods of the Goblin Temple in Howran, but Lulu was far older than the white crane. Also, Lulu had been a level 9 great demonic god for a long time. He had once been the commander of all the demonic armies in outer space. Rumor had it that Lulu could become a demonic god if there were enough seed. His knowledge of the secrets of the outer realms was much deeper than by he and Shi Quan's. First there is destruction, then there is death, then there is the possibility of rebirth. In the Sword sect, Du Yuan, who is ranked 3rd, has the title of Sword of Destruction. Fan Heqing, who is ranked 7th, is called Sword of Destruction. The core of the sword Tao arts they comprehend is actually the same, destruction. The power of destruction has the strongest destructive power and the greatest killing power. It is unbreakable and there is nothing it cannot destroy. After being destroyed, life will die. The power you comprehend is death. The aura and the true essence of power you release is the power of death after being destroyed. Once it spreads, all living beings will be affected. After that, there is the power of regeneration. The undying bird's power of regeneration may not be the strongest among the three powers, but it is the most mysterious and the hardest to comprehend. At this point, Lulu paused for a moment, allowing White Crane and Shi Quan to comprehend by themselves for a while. What Princess Qing Luan comprehended should be the phoenix's power of regeneration. She had relied on the power of regeneration to fuse with the undying bird's nest and once again enter the Mahasvara realm. Because of this, she received a grand invitation from the Shenhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company. They hoped that she could repair the second severely damaged bird's nest with the power of regeneration. And she reached the Daomerge immortal bird's nest and came here with the bandit's fortress of destruction. I think she's still studying the core power of the immortal bird's destruction. If she succeeds in mastering the truths of the two powers of destruction and regeneration, I'm afraid the future of the two of you, including Du Yuan, the sword of destruction, and Fan Heqing, the sword of shattering, will be in trouble. Lulu spoke of the mysteries within. White Crane and Shi Quan, the two great monsters and sword cultivators who comprehended the powers of death and desolation, fell silent with dark expressions. What? You don't like that Empress? Zhong Lipan grinned and laughed strangely. The great demon Lulu pointed out the profundity within, leaving a seed in the depths of Bai He and Shi Quan's hearts. It was to tell these two not to let their emotions affect their decisions. It would be best if they worked together to deal with the Azure Phoenix Empress. Zhong Lipan found it very strange. No one knows the true origins of that Princess Qing Luan. She is not a member of the Chen family. Lulu's expression was indifferent. We were able to help Chen Liangquan counterattack and replace him. Even the elders of the Chen family knew that she was an outsider. Zuan and I have investigated, but we don't know where she came from. Also, it was Zuan and I who cooperated with Chen Liangquan to make her lose her throne and drop her cultivation base. And White Crane and Shi Quan have officially become members of the Tongtian Trading Company. They are on the same side as me. Of course, I don't want to see her master the three great powers passed down by the immortal bird and successfully reach the nascent divinity realm. Zhongli de Pan and Zhou, you were shocked by his words. If Princess Qing Luan fully grasped the three powers of destruction, death, and rebirth left by the immortal bird and used them to break through to the paramount divinity realm, then Princess Qing Luan's battle prowess was probably second to none in Howran. No wonder she dared to put on airs in front of President Li. Zhong Lipan nodded gently. Inside the immortal bird's nest, Yuan concentrated on the bird nest that had successfully merged with the Blue Phoenix Empress. She used the branches that were as thick as dragons to build a circle around the destroyed bird nest. Endless dazzling divine light seemed to be flowing slowly inside the branches. The unique mysterious aura made Yuan marvel. He knew that his intuition was right. The nest built by the immortal bird was definitely not an inanimate object. It was simply a living body, like a strange creature in another form. He looked carefully and saw that the nest that Princess Qing Luan had integrated with the immortal bird was constantly undergoing subtle changes. From a nest, it was actually becoming more and more like a bird that was slowly spreading its wings. It was green and very magical. Blue Luan. Yuan's face was full of astonishment. He found that the nest in front of him was becoming more and more like the blue Luan with a scar on its forehead that he had seen 300 years ago. At that time, the blue Luan only had a fourth-grade bloodline. It was extremely weak, but it was eager to protect its master. Later, when he came to Blue Luan City, He learned from some sources that the Blue Luan's demonic body had died, and only its demonic soul remained. The Blue Luan's demonic soul had merged with Blue Luan City and become the formation soul of the heaven-ascending Divine Luan formation. It was also the central hub of the formation that could help Princess Qing Luan operate the Grand Formation. However, because Chen Liangquan had succeeded in seizing power, the Divine Bird and Princess Qing Luan had disappeared together. Yu Yuan finally couldn't help but ask, "Your Majesty, this is the Blue Luan?" Princess Qing Luan, who had a phoenix coronet on her head, hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "My name is Chen Qinghuang." "Chen Qinghuang, Princess Qing Luan?" Yu Yuan was surprised. He thought for a moment and didn't know what to call her. "Just call her Blue Phoenix." "Blue Phoenix? Okay." Yu Yuan nodded slightly and said, "What's the relationship between the Blue Luan's demonic soul and the Undying Bird's nest that you've merged with?" "The Undying Bird's nest has become the new demonic body of the Blue Luan, and it's even stronger than before." Princess Qing Luan didn't explain in detail and said with a smile, "Yu Yuan, the Blue Luan and I are very grateful to you. Moreover, you and I are really fated. If I had known it was you in Blue Luan City, perhaps I would have left the Blue Luan Empire long ago." "Why do you say that?" Yu Yuan asked curiously. "Actually, when I returned to Blue Luan City, I planned to disperse. Because before I returned, I found this Undying Bird's nest and comprehended the mysterious power hidden inside. I came back to disperse my Tao and once again rush into outer space with the Yang spirit realm. I merged with the Tao in Blue Luan City, so I can only disperse my Tao here." Princess Qing Luan's peerless face under the beaded curtain seemed to smile slyly. Yu Yuan was shocked when he heard this. "You originally planned to abdicate the throne and disperse your Tao? The Shenhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company's scheme, Zuan and Lu Lu's cooperation with Chen Liangquan's coercion, just happened to be what you wanted?" "Yes, I should thank them. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to explain to the three great sects. I couldn't even find a good excuse." Princess Qing Luan nodded. Just as Yu Yuan was about to ask for more details, she said softly, "I'll tell you later." Yu Yuan then closed his mouth. A moment later, President Li of the Tongtian Trading Company reappeared with a huge silver plate in his hand. After he appeared, the silver plate enlarged bit by bit. On the plate, pieces of flesh with boundless qi and blood gradually appeared. There were also many water jars and jars filled with the blood essence of foreign races and the fresh hearts of vicious beasts. The life altar in Yu Yuan's body immediately reacted strongly. It immediately recognized that almost all of the blood and flesh came from rank 9 foreign race warriors or great demons and vicious beasts of the same rank. There was no blood below rank 8. "For now, that's all." President Li looked at Yu Yuan and said, "The others are on their way here. Don't worry, the Chamber of Commerce is willing to invest in restoring this Undying Bird's nest to its original state." Whoosh! The constantly enlarging silver plate fell on top of Yu Yuan's head, forming a small miniature world inside. Yu Yuan, on the other hand, could continuously take pieces of flesh and blood from them and refine them into the life altar. Then, through conversion, she could refine the power that contained the creation of life and feed it back to the Blue Phoenix Empress. Chapter 1060. Surrounded by layers of misty light, the enormous crater in the ground was filled with a dilapidated bird's nest. At the center of the giant bird's nest, a blue luan was dancing gracefully. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent as it spun gracefully. Occasionally, it would use its beak and claws, which glowed with divine light, to poke at the branches of the bird's nest or peck at the broken branches. When it pecked at the broken branches, it was as if the meridians had been reconnected and regenerated. The branches, which had been hastily built and not arranged properly, were poked by the bird's claws, and the strange energy that had been stagnant inside them instantly flowed unimpeded. The enormous bird's nest was being repaired by Sun Jun's Blue Luan with unfathomable methods. However, the Blue Luan itself radiated a destructive power. This divine bird, which seemed to be able to destroy all living things, was repairing a bird's nest with its claws and beak. Its actions were abnormal and strange. Chen Qinghuang, who was wearing a phoenix crown, sat on the head of the Blue Luan that was constantly releasing a destructive aura. This Chen Qinghuang was like a resurrection goddess who wielded the power of regeneration. The aura that flowed through her body seemed to be able to make those who were in hibernation break out of the earth and descend into the world. In addition, there were two other Chen Qinghuangs in the positions of the Blue Luan's claws. One was in the Yin spirit and the other was in the Yang spirit. Yu Yuan sat cross-legged on the Blue Luan's spread wings. The life altar, which was as red as a blood diamond, had left his body and floated in the air 3 meters above his head. It slowly spun and purified the flesh of the ferocious beasts and greater demons that had been thrown into it. The life altar burst forth with blood energy that was as turbulent as the sea. It was like a volcano that was trembling. Whoosh whoosh. Boom boom. The crimson life altar's blood energy was like a tide, like an eruption of a mountain flood. Its aura was shocking. At this moment, if there were a rank 9 greater demon or a foreign race expert of the same level who happened to be nearby, their flesh and blood would resonate, and they would be frightened by the commotion inside the life altar. Suddenly, a dark red torrent of blood energy shot out of the life altar. Immediately, it poured towards Yu Yuan like a waterfall. Then, it was guided by Yu Yuan with a secret technique, changing the direction of its flow. He gave it a strand of his own qi and blood, and it went towards Chen Qinghuang on the head of the Blue Luan. Whoosh! The strange flow of qi and blood that contained the fortune of life was absorbed by Princess Qing Luan's true body and injected into the Blue Luan's beak. Then, it lightly pecked at a broken branch. The branch made a chi-chi sound, as if a severed azure dragon was being reborn with a magical power. Yu Yuan, who was sitting motionlessly, watched with rapt attention. He discovered that the withered branch was like the veins of a giant beast. It suddenly became knotted and powerful, and contained an astonishing amount of energy. He clicked his tongue in amazement. The 3 Yin spirits of Princess Qing Luan in the form of souls flowed with a deathly aura, which was somewhat similar to that of the Crane of Death and Shi Quan. The other Princess Qing Luan should be a Yang spirit that had been separated, but it was completely different from the Yang spirits he usually saw. The Yang spirits forged by most human cultivators were the crystallization of heavenly souls and pure spiritual power, mixed with some precious treasures that were hard to find in the world. However, in Yu Yuan's perception, Princess Qing Luan's Yang spirit was actually the crystallization of an extremely dense flesh and blood power and her heavenly soul. It didn't feel like a human, but more like a demon. What he couldn't understand the most was that Princess Qing Luan's monster-like Yang spirit body was filled with destructive power. Her true body landed on the head of the Blue Luan and shone with a mysterious aura of regeneration. Every time she borrowed his aura of creation, the cracked branches of the second undying bird's nest were reconnected, and vitality was restored. When the Yin spirit died, the Yang spirit, like the body of a great demon, was filled with the aura of destruction. Her true body and primary soul were reborn. Yu Yuan muttered to himself as he continuously pulled the flesh and blood of fierce beasts and great demons from the huge silver plate according to Chen Qinghuang and President Li's request, and fused it with the life altar to refine. The 3 undying birds' nests more or less contain the power of death, destruction, and regeneration. As if seeing his confusion, Chen Qinghuang, who was on the head of the Blue Luan, spoke with her true body. What I first comprehended was actually the power of regeneration. She lowered her head and looked at the Qing Luan beneath her. But the power contained in the first undying bird's nest is mostly destructive. It was because of this that the winged clan regarded them as the descendants of the undying bird. I comprehended the power of regeneration from the destruction nest, and then merged with the destruction nest, causing the yang spirit to undergo a qualitative transformation. I can't figure out the transformation into a strange state that is different from most human yang spirits. As she spoke, another power that contained abundant vitality was guided out of the life altar by Yu Yuan. Because of her request, it flew to her yang spirit body. The qi and blood energy entered her yang spirit body and seemed to cleanse her yang spirit physique. Then, Yu Yuan saw her yang spirit body inject the power of destruction into the blue Luan's claw and gently patted a branch next to it. Crack! A branch was broken because of this. The people of the Tongtian Trading Company and the people who tried to restore this death nest had a mess. Her yang spirit body smiled and explained, the branches that didn't belong to the death nest were collected by them and put together, which hindered the mysteries of the undying nest. Yu Yuan nodded and understood what she meant. If the undying bird is still alive, it should be in the third rebirth nest. The death, destruction, and rebirth nests are not fixed. They are always changing. For example, the destruction nest that I first merged with. If the regenerative power contained in it exceeds the destructive power, it will be a rebirth nest. As for the rebirth nest, the regenerative power inside will weaken, and the destructive power will increase accordingly. If the three nests are complete and undamaged, the three powers can transform and transmit to each other. Therefore, the three undying birds' nests contain unimaginable mysteries. Chen Qinghuang didn't mind telling Yu Yuan the secrets that the world could never understand. Yu Yuan listened carefully and soon understood. Destruction, death, and rebirth. As long as the three undying birds' nests were complete, they could constantly change. Any one of the nests could become a rebirth nest, which could allow the undying bird to be reborn. If I can merge with the Tao and refine the three undying birds' nests one by one, I can really understand the true meaning of the destruction, death, and rebirth power that she left behind. I don't need anyone's permission or help, and I don't need to vacate a seat to reach the ultimate level. The three Princess Qing Luan exclaimed softly in unison. Yu Yuan was shocked. It's not hard to understand. I can rely on the undying bird to seize the great fortune that was scattered across the universe after her death. With the true meaning of the three powers she left behind and the three nests, I can naturally ascend to the highest seat. In that way, I will transcend the rules of heaven and earth in Haoran and no longer be restricted. Chen Qinghuang's true body intercepted another stream of life creation power and threw it to the blue Luan under his feet. She laughed softly. The life altar in your body will become the second heart of the Chaos Kuan when it reaches the peak. If you can kill the primal Chaos Kuan and use the life altar in your body to devour the recovered primal Chaos Kuan, you will be able to surpass the restrictions of vast Ho's laws and reach the supreme seat. Every star behemoth that was born in the beginning has such a miraculous power. Princess Qing Luan told this secret to Yu Yuan in an enlightened tone. In a distant and unfamiliar sea of stars, a meteor the size of a continent with mountains, seas, and lakes was slowly flying by. The surroundings were dead silent. There were no stars, sun, or moon. There were no traces of living beings. There were many islands in the depths of the sea. Most of the islands were inhabited by Een corpses. Some were Azuras, some were dark spirit clansmen, and there were also fierce beasts and great demons that obeyed the Een corpse king. The Chaos Kuan in human form sat on a deck chair on an island in the sea, narrowing its eyes as it looked at the dark sea of stars. How long until the Een corpse king enters the annihilation star field? He suddenly blurted out this sentence. Half a month if it's fast. 3 months if it's slow. Not too fast or too slow. 1.5 months will be enough to reach the edge of the annihilation star field. All right. Chapter 1061. Fei Shui, the great elder of the void spirit demon race, did not go to where Shi Quan, the white crane, and Zhong Li De were. After she left the undying bird's nest of death, her figure flashed and appeared next to Bei Ning. She said with a smile, "Girl, you're very lucky." Teacher. Bei Ning, who usually had a cold expression, showed a surprised smile because of her arrival. Bei Ning still felt shocked when she thought of the recent series of difficult experiences from the moment she mistakenly entered the Nirvana spirit world. Now that she finally saw this important person of the race, she felt much more at ease. Fei Shui, Mia of the dark spirit race, Sansum of the Banshee race, Can Li and other foreign race experts were also in the VIP area. After she appeared, they greeted her in a friendly manner. It was obvious how popular this great elder of the void spirit demon race was. Fei Shui smiled at them and returned their greetings. In the end, when her gaze landed on Elena, she was surprised. "Why is there someone from the Azure race here? Is there a problem?" Elena snorted softly. "Nothing, just a little surprised." Fei Shui shook her head with a smile and explained casually, "The blood demon race of the Outer Realm and the Azure race are the most opposed to having any relationship with the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company. The Shura of Gojoseon and the great demon god Grek are the two leaders of the resistance." What she meant was that it was strange to see an Azura clansman in Thousand Bird Realm. "I am a bandit. My father is Fernan, who was expelled by the Shura of Gojoseon." When Elena said this, she did not feel embarrassed at all. She even seemed to be proud. "My father is still alive and well. So it's Fernan's beloved daughter." Fei Shui nodded slightly and smiled again. "How were you allowed to enter Thousand Bird Realm in advance?" "Yu Yuan specially brought me here." Elena raised her head and said. Faith was stunned and turned to look at Benin. When she saw Benin nod with a strange expression, Faith became even more curious. However, she didn't continue to ask. Instead, she grabbed Benin's hand and carefully sensed it. After confirming that Benin's bloodline had successfully advanced and that there were no hidden dangers, she said with praise, "No problem, not only have you advanced, your potential has also increased. If everything goes well, you might be able to go to that holy land in a few hundred years." Hearing her words, Benin's face was filled with joy and anticipation. After that, Fisher walked towards Mia and Sansom to catch up with old friends. Not long after she arrived at the Thousand Bird Realm, she was invited by President Li to discuss how to build the Starry Sky Ferry and maintain its stability with Zhou Yu and a few other experts who were proficient in the power of space. She hadn't had the chance to have a good chat with Mia and the others about what had happened in Howren. After all, rumors were just rumors. Fei Shui wanted to know the truth through his old friend. That Yu Yuan can control 2 dragon beheading stages? The servant girl who took care of the dragon beheading stage in place of that dragon beheading stage is the current artifact's soul of the Fiend Demon Cauldron? Logically speaking, the dragon beheading stage wouldn't choose him because of a servant girl. The more Fei Shui understood, the more surprised she was. The more she asked about the heaven-splitting divine stone called the dragon beheading stage, the more she felt that it was strange. She had a lot of doubts about Yu Yuan. Half a month later, President Li and Zhou Yu once again arrived at the deep pit where Yu Yuan and Princess Qing Luan were. When they looked carefully, they found that the lair that flowed with the aura of death was shining with an auspicious aura. At this time, the blue Luan that was formed by the destruction of the lair moved lightly and left the lair below. Chen Qinghuang's Yin spirit and Yang spirit merged into one again. She stood on the forehead of the blue Luan, pondered for a moment, and said, "The blue Luan will return to Howren along the star path opened by the Tongtian Trading Company and the Shenhun sect. You should communicate with the desolate god. It must be received by the desolate god personally and be taken to the great lake of the desolate god. President Li's eyes lit up. We will take care of this. It will become the immortal bird's lair again in the great lake of the desolate god. As for me, I still need some time to merge with this death lair. Chen Qinghuang turned her head and looked at Yu Yuan. Thank you for your hard work. It's nothing. Yu Yuan handed the empty silver plate to President Li, nodded to Zhou Yu, and flew away. He knew that he was no longer needed later. Chen Qinghuang would first refine the repaired death lair, and then let Zhou Yu, Fei Shui, and a few people who were proficient in space arcana to refine the starry sky ferry with the death lair. The hidden dangers of the death lair had been resolved because of Chen Qinghuang's repair. The thousand-bird realm could now guide experts from all over the world to come in. He also obtained rare leisure time because of this. Can you deduce the approximate location of the third lair? After Yu Yuan left, President Li hesitated for a moment and asked seriously. After I refine this lair, I will try to sense it. But right now, I don't have such power. Understood. Yu Yuan. Master. Seeing him appear, Mia, the other experts, and Qi Yunhong immediately came to greet him. Among the crowd, the 9-star sage of the star race, Beirut, was in high spirits and full of smiles. He cupped his hands and thanked him from afar. Thank you for the pill, drug god. Are you all right? Yu Yuan asked. My slowly draining life force has been reversed. I feel life force again. Beirut nodded repeatedly and pointed at Wenlu, who had the bloodline of the dark spirit race. This girl told me that I'm almost like a withered tree in spring. Yu Yuan greeted him with a smile. You're here too. Wenlu nodded slightly. My cultivation base is not high enough, but my bloodline has awakened, and I have the protection of our race's sacred item. With Elder Mia's protection, I was able to leave Howren smoothly. Yu Yuan, can you help us refine special pills? Mia of the dark spirit race bowed respectfully to Yu Yuan. You know that the one thing our dark spirit race doesn't lack is all kinds of rare medicinal herbs. We have the ability to grow and cultivate rare spirit herbs in the Starry River, but we don't have the ability to refine pills. Wenlu also bowed. Yu Yuan, do you think I have the potential to refine pills? If possible, can you take me as your disciple? Take you as my disciple? Yu Yuan was stunned. The drug god? He's the drug god? The old drug god Haunch and now Yu Yuan. Some people from the Tongtian Trading Company and other invited dignitaries from different races were gathered in front of a nearby palace. Hearing the discussion, they were instantly intrigued. All of a sudden, humans and outsiders from other regions swarmed in. In the Starry River, there were many races that were proficient in refining spiritual tools, and it wasn't rare for them to have experts in building ancient starships. However, alchemists, even the dark spirit race, which was most likely to have alchemists, didn't have a true legacy in refining pills. In Howren, the Tool sect and the Drug God sect could stand shoulder to shoulder. However, in the boundless Starry River, those who could refine pills were even rarer than those who could forge spiritual tools. Therefore, after hearing that a drug god had appeared in the Tongtian Trading Company, and that he was the reincarnation of the legendary figure from years ago, powerful experts and magnates from different races instantly boiled over. Yu Yuan looked at the people swarming over in shock and couldn't help but laugh. At this time, he finally realized that even if he didn't rely on his identity as a member of the Shenhun sect, cultivation base, and combat strength, just his identity as a divine-level alchemist was enough for the Tongtian Trading Company to welcome him to the Thousand Birds realm with the most solemn ceremony. His existence was a golden signboard for the Tongtian Trading Company. There was a drug god in the Thousand Birds realm who could refine many miraculous pills, and the pills had the miraculous effect of bringing the dead back to life and changing fate. The dying 9-star sage Beirut was revived because of the drug god's pills. This news was enough to explode. I knew it would be like this. President Li floated in the air with Zhou Yu. Looking at the excited experts from all over the world, he smiled brightly. Chapter 1062. Thousand Bird Realm, in a pill refining room that had been built long ago. Flowing flame was in the middle of the pill furnace. The grooves at the bottom were filled with heavenly flame crystals. There were no violent volcanoes in this realm, so it was impossible to guide the flames of the Earth's core. The Tongtian Trading Company could only store as many flame crystals as possible in the pill refining room. There were many glass bottles in the cabinets, as well as potted herbs and the blood essences of many strange beasts. When Lu, who had the bloodline of the dark spirit race, stood in a strange flower pot with leaves that looked like burning flames. Exuberant life force flowed out of her palms as she used a unique bloodline magic to help the rare absolute flame flower grow. The green light seeped into the branches of the strange flower and quickly nourished it. It didn't take long for the absolute flame flower to mature, and the leaves actually burned fiercely. A sulfuric floral fragrance began to spread from the strange ultimate flame flower. Throw it into the pill furnace. At this time, Yu Yuan, who was sitting quietly to the side, opened his eyes and shouted. When Lu's expression was excited as she quickly took out the absolute flame flower from the potted plant and placed the burning leaves into the flowing flame that had opened the lid. With a bang, a circle of orange flames lit up inside the pill furnace. A refreshing medicinal fragrance wafted out as well. Put 3 stalks of ice luster grass into the pill furnace immediately to neutralize the medicinal effects. 2 drops of ghost face spider's blood essence. Extinguish the fire. Add frost crystals into the furnace. Yu Yuan, who was narrowing his eyes, kept giving orders. When Lu moved between the cabinets and bottles like a butterfly. According to Yu Yuan's orders, she put the corresponding spiritual materials and herbs into the pill furnace. She was so busy that she was covered in sweat. However, there was a happy smile at the corner of her mouth. She was clearly enjoying it. She and Mia had to rely on the Dark Spirit clan behind them to obtain the guidance of the drug god and be imparted with his medicine refining skills. It was an opportunity that they had painstakingly begged for. For the time being, Yu Yuan could only agree to let her give it a try and see how her comprehension ability and talent were. He didn't immediately accept her as a disciple, but she was already very satisfied. Dong dong. A soft knocking sound came from outside. When Yu Yuan turned his head to look, he heard Zhou Yu say, "Canli from the Radiant Tribe sent a list over. She asked you to take a look and see if you can help her refine a batch of pills. The remuneration is also on the list. Everything is up to you." Yu Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Come in." Zhou Yu pushed open the door and came in. Seeing that when Lu was busy, he wasn't surprised. He handed over a piece of paper with beautiful writing. In the near future, there may be a lot of people asking for medicine. Think about it yourself. Our Tongtian Trading Company is only responsible for passing on the message. We don't dare to restrict you. Yu Yuan took a look at it and noticed that the list of rewards included the blood essence of some rare dire beast. He immediately realized that Canli was being considerate. After taking a closer look, he discovered that most of the pills that Canli wanted to refine were common in Howren and could benefit souls. He nodded and said, "Tell Canli that I'll take this job. Tell her to prepare the ingredients as soon as possible." The Radiant Tribe wasn't good at refining souls. In this aspect, they were far inferior to the demonesses and heavenly devils. Spirit plants that could help the growth of souls were precious treasures that the Radiant Tribe had always dreamed of, not to mention pills. Considering that he had a good relationship with Canli, and that the Radiant Tribe was the origin of Chen Liangchuan's bloodline, they might have a lot of opportunities to work together in the future. Therefore, he agreed. Okay. Zhou Yu smiled and slapped his head. Oh right, Emperor Heaven Shaker, the first person to leave the forbidden land of the fallen moons, has arrived at the thousand-bird realm. He said that he'd like to visit you when you're free. Yu Yuan's expression flickered slightly. Emperor Heaven Shaker? Yes, Zhou Yu explained. He left Howren with the God King in the bronze coffin. Now, he's a member of the Shenhun sect, and the heroic soul incantation's drawbacks have been resolved. Emperor Heaven Shaker is now a late Sun God realm expert, and he's expected to enter the Freedom Realm soon. I see. Yu Yuan was just about to say that he would meet Emperor Heaven Shaker after he finished refining the pills in front of him when he suddenly heard a vague call. Yu Yuan, Yu Yuan, Yu Yuan. This call seemed to be directed at him, and it echoed in Yu Yuan's mind as if it was triggered by a profound secret art. He went blank for a moment before he focused his mind and sensed the direction with his life alter. A moment later, he suddenly rose to his feet and grabbed Zhou Yu's arm. There's a silver scale ray starship outside the thousand-bird realm. Take me there. Is there something urgent? Zhou Yu asked with a serious expression. Yu Yuan nodded. Zhou Yu didn't ask any more questions. He closed his eyes and sensed the direction, then left the alchemy room with Qin Lai. With a flick of his horsetail whisk, the two charged into the sky. Soon, the two of them appeared on a shining silver warship that seemed to be made of silver. A dozen silver-scale warriors hurried over to salute Zhou Yu when they saw him. One of the incomparably majestic warriors was just about to speak when Zhou Yu shouted, "Is there a huge blood cocoon on your ship?" "Yes, we found it on the way, so we brought it on board," the silver-scale warrior answered honestly. "Get it out," Yu Yuan said in a low voice. "He is?" The Silver-Scale Clan's 9th-rank warrior asked Zhou Yu about the background of this human youth in front of him. Zhou Yu said, "Yu Yuan. So it's the medicine god." The 9th-level warrior from the Silver-Scale Clan instantly became excited. He, who had yet to be allowed to step into the Thousand Birds realm, already knew that there was a medicine god overseeing it. He was having a headache over how to ask the medicine god to refine a divine pill that could change the upper limit of his bloodline for his son. Suddenly, he realized that the medicine god had personally come to his warship, so he immediately waved his hand. "Get that blood cocoon out for me." "Yes, sir." A silver-scale warrior on the ship responded. Soon, an equally tall silver-scale expert with a rank 8 bloodline lifted an oval-shaped blood cocoon onto the ground with one hand. The large blood cocoon was stained with blood, and there were obvious signs of life inside, but it was very weak. A woman from the blood god must have been severely injured. She repeatedly used the blood escape technique, and most of her meridians were torn. Her soul is also in a terrible condition. The leader of the Silver Scale Warrior explained to Yu Yuan personally. Not long after we entered the Annihilation Starfield, we found her in a desolate area. I originally planned to ask the people of the Tongtian Trading Company about her situation when we arrived at the Thousand Bird Realm. I haven't been allowed to enter yet. Leave her to me. When you arrive at the Thousand Bird Realm, come find me. Yu Yuan said. Okay. Zhou Yu looked carefully and said in shock, "How did she suffer such heavy injuries?" "I don't know. Let me wake her up first." Yu Yuan released the evil demon cauldron and put the oval-shaped blood cocoon into the small world inside the cauldron. Then, he returned to the Thousand Bird Realm with Zhou Yu. She should have come from the star passage we opened. Because Princess Qing Luan wanted to repair the undying bird's nest, the nest could not be used as a star ferry for the time being. Therefore, she should not have been able to directly reach the Thousand Bird Realm from the nearest star ferry. Zhou Yu thought for a moment and roughly knew what had happened. She has always been arrogant. She should have taken the risk to cross the Star River and come to the Annihilation Starfield by herself. Then, I don't know who she met midway, but she ended up like this. As he said this, Zhou Yu shook his head. No matter how talented she is or how strong she is, she should understand that there are great dangers everywhere in the outer realms. It's not like the Howren heaven and earth, where she is dressed as the goddess of the blood god. Not many sects and forces would dare to make a move on her. Inside the large blood cocoon was Enziching. After breaking through to the sun god realm, due to the special secret technique of the blood god, she left the Howren heaven and earth with her true body and came to the annihilation starfield. However, she ended up in such a miserable state. She used the blood escape for the last time and finally successfully escaped into the annihilation starfield. We have rules that forbid fighting inside and have a way to sense it. Therefore, the person who caused her to suffer heavy injuries did not take the opportunity to chase after her. That's why she was able to escape. Zhou Yu analyzed. I'll save her first. Chapter 1063. On the second floor of the pill refinement room. Zlotsla. Yu Yuan drew a slender crimson sword light with his 2 fingers and started cutting the large blood cocoon on the ground. The blood cocoon was extremely tough. He had no choice but to use the 9 slashes of raising the heavens after failing to tear it apart. As the blood cocoon slowly tore apart, Yu Yuan keenly sensed that it was a special protective shell formed by Enziching's blood after it had solidified. This protective shell had devoured a lot of tainted energies from the outer realms to prevent Enziching, who was unconscious, from being harmed. This was why the blood cocoon was as tough as metal, and couldn't be torn apart so easily. Yu Yuan even thought that the silver scale experts didn't break open the large blood cocoon and take Enziching out to investigate because they thought it was too troublesome. The blood cocoon was probably a secret art Enziching had used together with blood escape when she sensed danger. Only when the blood cocoon finally split into 2 halves was Enziching's face revealed. Her increasingly beautiful face was the first to enter Yu Yuan's eyes. Yu Yuan's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but examine her closely. Enziching's exquisite facial features were mesmerizing even with her eyes closed. In Yu Yuan's 2 lives, he had seen countless beautiful women, but Enziching, who was becoming more and more attractive, still ranked at the top. Many times, Yu Yuan found it hard to connect her with the servant girl who had served him in his early years. This was because the current Enziching exuded a mysterious, noble, and arrogant aura even when she was unconscious. It was a unique calmness that could only be cultivated by someone who had been in a high position for many years and had been carefully cared for. The purple divine armor seemed to have turned into purple crystals that were as thin as cicada's wings and covered her entire body. Other than her face, every other part of her body was covered by the purple divine armor. Yu Yuan lowered his head and examined her with his soul awareness and flesh aura at the same time. Enziching was severely injured. Many of her meridians were broken, her sternum and spine showed signs of cracking, and her internal organs were filled with dirty blood that couldn't be expelled. Between her eyebrows, a drop of deep purple blood the size of a fingernail protected her small world in her sea of consciousness. Even someone as powerful as Yu Yuan couldn't penetrate that fingernail-sized drop of blood with a wisp of his soul to pry into her sea of consciousness. Whoosh! A wisp of his soul that contained life aura rushed into Enziching's profound gate acupoint in her chest, entering her flesh aura world. He didn't know if it was because Enziching had subconsciously allowed him to enter, but his wisp of soul didn't encounter any obstruction. It wasn't resisted by the purple armor, and it flashed in. Within Enziching's flesh aura world, Yu Yuan's refined soul, which was a mixture of flesh aura and soul will, morphed into a crimson shadow. With a single glance, he saw that there were actually 7 amethyst pawns in Enziching's flesh aura heaven and earth, each of which took up several acres of land. Yu Yuan's crimson figure floated in the air. Looking down, he discovered that the 7 pools were also arranged in the shape of the Big Dipper. Just as he clicked his tongue in wonder, he took a closer look, and discovered that there was another Enziching lying quietly. This Enziching's flesh aura was surging. Forged from her soul and extremely rich flesh aura, it gave him the feeling that it was Qin Qinghuang's yang spirit body. Yang spirit? Yu Yuan went blank for a few seconds, and then noticed that the 7 amethyst pawns were sitting on Enziching's chest. They corresponded to the 7 vital acupoints. When he cultivated the fiend body refining art and opened new acupoints with the help of Yin sunflower essence in the Land of Terror, the first 7 vital acupoints he opened were also those 7. However, there wasn't a single drop of refined blood in those 7 amethyst pawns. The 7 blood pawns were where Enziching's flesh aura world stored her flesh aura. Her wondrous yang spirit body had temporarily fallen into her flesh aura world, so she must have been seriously injured. Yu Yuan soon came to a realization. Staring at Enziching's yang spirit body, he discovered that it was covered in blood-colored light with purple sparkling light. He couldn't see through anything else. If that was the case, his true form, which was outside, pondered briefly and came up with a plan. Whoosh! He summoned the Crimson Life Altar, and it sat on Enziching's chest. Piece after piece of 9th-grade fierce beast flesh was put into the Life Altar, where they rapidly merged and refined. After a while, wisps of extremely pure flesh aura that contained the power of fortune were channeled by him into Enziching's profound gate acupoint. Like a slender river, they flowed into her flesh aura world. Inside, Yu Yuan's soul paid close attention to his flesh aura essence, and a blood-colored river appeared in this world. The blood-colored river poured into one of the amethyst pawns. The amethyst pawns instantly became dazzling, pulling and withdrawing as they absorbed the rich flesh aura contained in the blood-colored river and turned it into drops of blood. Thanks to the flesh aura that Yu Yuan had given her, Enziching's entire flesh aura world suddenly showed signs of life again. Seeing that it was effective, Yu Yuan couldn't help but let out a bitter sigh and muttered, "Sure enough, I have to pay back what I owe." With these words, he helped Princess Qingluan repair the immortal bird's nest. As a result, he had no choice but to take out the pieces of high-tier demon and fierce beast flesh he had stashed away. The blood god had treated him well when he had been in Howran. In the forbidden land of the fallen moons, he had refined a large amount of outsider blood essence with the blood god's treasures, which had enabled him to fight 8th-grade silver scales and rock people head-on. Whether it was Anwen or Enziching, they had both taken great care of him. Especially after learning that he was a descendant of the evil King Yuzhen, Enziching, the eccentric and merciless divine daughter, no longer made things difficult for him in secret. He was grateful to the blood god for what he had gone through later. That was why he had spared no effort to save Enziching when he had met her again and seen her severely injured. A long time passed. Not only had he converted all of the flesh aura he had stashed away into pure flesh aura with the life altar, but he had also purchased a large amount of blood essence from various races and powerful fierce beast flesh aura from Zhouyu with his spirit stones. Finally, he had filled the 7 blood pawns in Enziching's flesh aura world with blood. "I've done everything I can. You'll have to rely on your own healing ability and recovery ability for the rest." Yu Yuan, who was both mentally and physically exhausted, slowly stood up and stared at her beautiful face for a few more times before walking to the alchemy room on the first floor. Wen Lu, who carried the dark spirit bloodline, smiled peacefully and said, "Thank you for your hard work, big brother Yu." Yu Yuan waved his hand. "Let's put the matter of the medicinal pills on hold for now." Wen Lu said gently, "Okay." After pushing open the door of the pill refining room, Yu Yuan appeared outside. He looked up into the sky and saw many figures looking around curiously through the realm barrier of the Thousand Birds realm. Many people from the Tongtian Trading Company floated in midair, responsible for taking them to a place to rest. Most of those people were non-humankind visitors. Some of them were evil cultivators that Yu Yuan had vaguely heard about, but had disappeared long ago. Some of them were brutal spirit demons. Seeing this, Yu Yuan immediately knew that the lair of death that Chen Qinghuang had repaired should no longer have any hidden dangers. The Tongtian Trading Company had also lifted the ban, allowing guests from afar to abandon their ancient starships and enter the Thousand Birds realm. The grand meeting is about to begin. A hearty and heroic voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Yu Yuan turned his head and saw a tall and burly man wearing a long gray robe. His eyes were dark green, and he grinned and laughed at him. "Long time no see. I knew you were extraordinary, but I still underestimated you." A strong sense of familiarity rose in Yu Yuan's heart, but he couldn't recall who this resolute, chiseled face in front of him was. The tall man laughed. "I've refined a new body. Why, you don't recognize me." "Greetings, Emperor Heaven-shaking." Another voice could be heard. The Azure Phoenix Empress, who wore a phoenix crown on her head and had her face covered, floated over and bowed to that man. "You flatter me." The tall man hurriedly bowed and said sincerely, "We're both emperors of the human world, but your achievements and cultivation level have long surpassed mine." "You're my senior," Chen Qinghuang said seriously. "It's you." Yu Yuan instantly understood, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. She stared at him again and said, "Congratulations. After so many years, Emperor Heaven-shaking had reached the late stage of the sun god state. The body in front of him didn't look like a body of flesh and blood, but a strange form of the sun god. Chapter 1064. Where's Mr. Yen? After exchanging a few pleasantries, Yu Yuan immediately asked, "What's the matter with Heaven-shaking Emperor?" Yen Qiling had suddenly disappeared in the fallen moon Forbidden Land and never returned. Yu Yuan had always wanted to know what had happened to him. Emperor Heaven-shaking had followed the heaven-trampling expert, who was Yen Qiling's former master. Yu Yuan believed Emperor Heaven-shaking should know something. "Don't worry. He's fine." Emperor Heaven-shaking stood in front of the hall and looked at the endless stream of people entering the Thousand-Bird realm. "Come to think of it, you two aren't meant to meet. Not long after you left the Nirvana spirit realm, he arrived there through a spatial rift. The two of you just passed by each other. Are you surprised?" Yu Yuan was startled. "There's such a thing? That's why I said it's a coincidence." Emperor Heaven-shaking took a deep look at Chen Qinghuang. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "I'd like to ask you something on behalf of the Shinhan sect." "Go ahead," Chen Qinghuang said in an indifferent tone. No one knew what her expression was behind the beaded curtain of the phoenix coronet. "The third immortal bird's nest is most likely the main source of rebirth. Do you have any clues?" Emperor Heaven-shaking asked solemnly. Chen Qinghuang had refined and merged the destruction bird's nest and the death bird's nest. She had mentioned to President Li that she might be able to sense the location of the third immortal bird's nest after the death bird's nest had been refined. The Shenhun sect was very concerned about this. Apart from meeting Yu Yuan, the other reason Emperor Han Tian had come here was because of this matter. The Shenhun sect had naturally participated in this grand event held by the Tongtian Trading Company in the Thousand-Bird realm. However, the experts of the Shenhun sect who were good at dealing with other forces weren't nearby at the moment. The few who had come were scattered across the desolate lands in the domain of annihilation. They would only show up when the Thousand-Bird realm was in trouble. "I'm sorry, my judgment might be wrong. I tried, but I couldn't sense any traces of the third immortal bird's nest." Chen Qinghuang apologized, but her voice and behavior didn't sound embarrassed at all. "Yen Qiling has been in charge of this recently." The heaven-shaking emperor's expression was a bit dejected. He turned to Yu Yuan and said, He didn't come this time because he was caught up in this matter. Whether or not the phoenix was still alive was a matter of great importance, and they had to treat it seriously. If she's still alive and can give birth. With these words, he shot a strange look at Chen Qinghuang. I know that, if she's still alive, she might be able to be reborn. Then, Chen Qinghuang said in a casual tone, I will die. Everything I've gained so far will be taken back by her in an instant. Furthermore, I don't have any room to resist. Since you already know, I won't say anything more. In short, neither the Divine Soul sect nor the powerful experts of the other races want to see the legendary Bird of Death appear in the Starry River again. Martial Monarch Heaven Shaking made his stance clear. Then, he changed the topic and asked, Yu Yuan, why did you agree to introduce Lady Peach to the Shinhan sect? What's the problem? Yu Yuan asked curiously. Just as Heaven Shaking Emperor was about to say something, he suddenly saw numerous green lights flying towards him. He went blank for a moment before smiling bitterly and saying, Here's the problem. Yu Yuan's eyes narrowed as he discovered that it was Mia from the Dark Spirit race and a man and a woman from the 9th grade who had aged faces. Standing in front of the 3 9th grade Dark Spirit experts was a relatively young man with an unordinary bearing. The man was wearing a strange robe. The robe was covered with fine and delicate tree patterns, and was giving off a strong sense of wood power. The robe gave Yu Yuan the feeling that it was a dense forest. Wen Lu, who was supposed to stay in the pill refining room, seemed to have sensed something, and thus walked out. The silver necklace around Wen Lu's neck instantly turned dark green, and the mysterious power within it was stimulated, causing it to blossom with rich wood power. This palace was located in a relatively secluded place, away from the Tongtian Trading Company's trading area. There were trees and flowers in the vicinity. Because of the man's robe and the necklace around Wen Lu's neck, many plants and trees seemed to have received a timely rain and suddenly burst forth with astonishing vitality. Wen Lu looked timidly at the young man who seemed to be the leader of the Dark Spirit race. She instinctively sensed a force from his strange robe that was pulling at her necklace. She also felt the hostility of the young man from the Dark Spirit clan. Furthermore, Mia, who had led her away from Hao Qiong, kept winking at her from behind that person's back. She's the daughter of the High Priestess, who was born in Haoran. The sacred tool is also around her neck. Mia flew down and pointed at Wen Lu. With a respectful expression, she introduced her to the young man, then to Yu Yuan, Wen Lu, and the others. This is Kennard, the youngest son of our High Chieftain. Xiao En Kennard. Next to Mia, another old man with a rank 9 bloodline of the Dark Spirit race added in an incredibly skilled manner. Other than the Patriarch, he is the most talented member of the Xiao En family. He is known as the Son of the Forest. Kennard, the Son of the Forest, Martial Emperor Heaven Shaker muttered with an expressionless face. Her bloodline is impure. She doesn't deserve our race's sacred tool. After the introductions, Kennard looked at the necklace around Wen Lu's neck and said with a frown, This isn't the High Priestess' personal possession. She can't pass it on to her descendant. Also, if she wants to pass it on, she'll have to pass it on to a pure-blooded descendant. Her bloodline is mixed with human blood. Kennard, the Son of the Forest, said with disgust, Elder Mia, you shouldn't have brought her back. What you should have done was take back the High Priestess's sacred tool. He let out a soft snort. Mia sighed inwardly and bowed her head, not daring to refute. Kennard had a noble status and outstanding bloodline talent. Even though his status in the Dark Spirit race wasn't as high as Can Li's in the Radiant race, it wasn't far off. Not to mention that Kennard's father was in the prime of his life, the High Chieftain of the Dark Spirit race, and a peak 10th grade bloodline expert. She also respected and revered him from the bottom of her heart. Wen Lu bowed her head and didn't say a word. She seemed nervous and uneasy. She knew that she had been able to leave Howren early because of her dark spirit bloodline, the necklace around her neck, and Mia's protection. Without the necklace and Mia's care, she probably wouldn't have a place in the Starry River. And now, even Mia, who had always been respected, was fearful of Kennard's identity and didn't know what to do. What could she do? Thinking of this, Wenlu couldn't help but feel sad. She secretly clenched her fists, but felt powerless. She was gentle by nature. Now that Mia had taken her out of Howren and brought her to the Starry River, which was full of outsider experts, she had no one to rely on. Especially after losing Mia's protection. Please don't interfere with the internal affairs of the Dark Spirit race. The old man from the Dark Spirit clan, who had helped Kennard reveal his name and title, suddenly came to a stop in front of Yu Yuan and Emperor Heavenshaking, his eyes filled with warning. Elder Mia, take back the necklace first. We can talk about other things later. Kennard, the son of the forest, ordered Mia in an unquestionable tone. Then, he turned to look at Yu Yuan and said, "You're that medicine god? What's your name, Yu Yuan? Or Haunch?" Yu Yuan was about to say something when, "I don't care what your name is." Kennard's expression grew cold. "You're the one who said you wanted to introduce Hu Kaiyun or Lady Peach to the Shenhun sect, aren't you?" Yu Yuan couldn't help laughing and nodded. "I advise you not to do that," Kennard warned seriously. "She has committed heinous crimes in the spirit miasma realm, which is under the control of the dark spirit race. Almost all lives in the spirit miasma realm have been plunged into misery and suffering because of her. She's a target of the dark spirit race." Emperor Heavenshaking also shook his head slightly at Yu Yuan and advised him not to offend the dark spirit race for Hu Kaiyun.